The Great Serpent Mound in Ohio is one of the most impressive ancient earthworks in the United States. Spanning over 1,300 feet, this effigy mound takes the form of a coiled serpent and is located atop a plateau that may have been formed by a meteor impact millions of years ago. The site has been a focal point of intrigue, both for its symbolic design and for the mystery surrounding its construction. One of the most striking features of Serpent Mound is its precise alignment with celestial events. The head of the serpent points directly to the summer solstice sunset, and other parts of the structure are believed to align with the winter solstice and the equinoxes. This has led many to believe that the mound may have served as a kind of calendar for the people who built it, helping them mark significant times of the year. The origins of Serpent Mound have been hotly debated. Initial excavations in the late 19th century led researchers to attribute the mound to the Adena culture, a group that thrived in the Ohio Valley from around 800 BC to 100 AD. This assumption was based on the discovery of Adena burial mounds nearby, as well as the style of the earthwork, which seemed to match other Adena creations. However, more recent research has challenged this view. Radiocarbon dating of charcoal found at the site in the 1990s suggested a construction date closer to 1000 AD, which would place the mound in the period of the Fort Ancient culture. Despite these findings, some scholars argue that the Fort Ancient people may have only renovated or added to an earlier structure originally built by the Adena. This theory is bolstered by the fact that no artifacts directly associated with the builders have been found within the mound itself, making it difficult to definitively pinpoint its origin. The precise purpose of Serpent Mound remains unclear, though several theories have been proposed. Aside from its possible use as a calendar, the mound may have held spiritual or ceremonial significance. The lack of burial remains within the structure itself, contrasts with nearby mounds that served as burial sites, suggesting that Serpent Mound may have been used for different rituals. Additionally, the location of the mound on a plateau formed by a meteor impact may have been deliberately chosen due to beliefs about the energies or spiritual significance of such a site. Interestingly, Graham Hancock suggests that the Serpent Mound may have been influenced by a lost advanced civilization predating known cultures, like the Adena or Fort Ancient. He proposes that these ancient peoples had astronomical knowledge, and that the mound could align with celestial events tied to this forgotten civilization. However, Hancock's theory is not accepted by the archaeological mainstream. Jack Parsons was a paradoxical figure who seemed to straddle the realms of science and the occult with an ease that bewildered many of his contemporaries, to put it mildly. Born Marvel Whiteside Parsons in 1914, he grew up in Pasadena, California, and quickly developed an interest in explosives and science fiction. Also, as a quick aside, who the heck changes his name from Marvel to Jack? Stick with Marvel, man. This fascination would lead him to co-found both the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or JPL, laying the foundation for modern rocketry, as well as NASA. But what makes Parsons' story all the more intriguing is how his devotion to the mystical practices of Aleister Crowley coexisted with his scientific brilliance. Parsons' journey into rocketry began as a young man, experimenting with explosives in his backyard, and later joining a group of like-minded enthusiasts. This group conducted research at Caltech's Guggenheim Aeronautical Laboratory. Though initially dismissed as a fringe interest, Parsons and his colleagues made major breakthroughs in developing rocket propellants. During World War II, their efforts gained traction, leading to the formation of JPL, which eventually became an indispensable player in the American space program. At the same time Parsons was revolutionizing the field of rocketry, he was delving deeper into occultism. His introduction to Aleister Crowley's Thelema philosophy, which emphasized personal will and magical rituals, came in the early 1940s. He quickly rose through the ranks of the Ordo Templi Orientis, Crowley's magical order, and became the leader of its lodge in Pasadena. Parsons didn't just dabble in occultism, he fully embraced it. He saw no conflict between his rocket work and his occult beliefs. In fact, he viewed both as part of the same pursuit to transcend earthly limitations, whether through technology or mysticism. This dual life of science and magic often led to scandal. Parsons would chant invocations to various pagan deities before rocket tests, blending his professional work with his spiritual practices and raising a few eyebrows at the same time. His home, known as the Parsonage, became notorious for wild parties and occult rituals, attracting a mix of scientists, occultists, and science fiction writers. And to keep it current, I suppose these activities could be classified as quote-unquote freak-offs. Parsons and company embarked on a series of rituals called the Babylon Working, intended to summon a divine entity called Babylon. Parsons believed these rituals would herald a new age of freedom and self-expression. Despite his brilliance, Parsons' personal life spiraled out of control. His involvement in the occult, combined with his reputation for debauchery, made him an increasingly problematic figure in the eyes of the establishment. By 1944, Parsons had been forced out of the JPL, and his rocketry career effectively ended. However, he remained committed to his magical pursuits, even as his financial situation worsened. The end of Parsons' life was as dramatic as the rest. In 1952, at the age of 37, he died in a mysterious explosion in his home laboratory while working on special effects for films. Some speculated it was intentional to silence him, others thought it might be a magical ritual gone wrong, or simply a tragic accident due to Parsons' careless handling of explosives. Alice Van Alstyne, a 28-year-old mother of four, disappeared on March 26, 1976, under highly unusual circumstances. That night, Alice was at her home in Des Moines, Iowa, where she tucked her children into bed before vanishing without a trace. One of the factors that makes the case so perplexing is the total lack of any indication that she intended to leave. Her purse, coat, and even her shoes were found inside the home, despite freezing temperatures that evening. Her car was still parked outside, the door open, and the keys in the ignition. Notably, her children were left alone for 2 days before the neighbors found them and alerted the authorities about her disappearance. Alice had a complicated personal life at the time of her disappearance. She had recently left her second husband, having divorced her first husband, Lee Harlow Andre, in January 1975. Her relationship with Andre was a focal point in the investigation. He was reportedly abusive, and some of their children were born with health issues, likely tied to physical abuse she endured while pregnant. Alice's family and investigators have long suspected that Andre played a role in her disappearance. He admitted to visiting her the day she disappeared to discuss custody arrangements, but denied involvement in any foul play. Alice's ties to a controversial paramilitary group known as the Minutemen also plays a significant role in the case. Both Alice and Andre were affiliated with the group, which armed itself in preparation for a communist takeover of the United States. After leaving the group and abandoning the ideology associated with it, Alice reportedly expressed fear for her life. In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, she had confided in her father, telling him that she believed the Minutemen would slay her in an effort to keep her silent. This led some to speculate that her departure from the group may have been the catalyst for her vanishing, although there's no hard evidence to confirm this theory. Despite the abundance of concerning details, Alice's case went cold quickly. Notably, despite all the surrounding circumstances, the initial investigation focused largely on a criminal offense allegedly committed by Alice, child abandonment. As a result of this focus, in 1977, the police issued a warrant for her arrest on charges of child desertion, a decision that is now viewed as a misstep in the investigation. The case was further hindered when original case files were destroyed in a 1993 flood, severely limiting the chances of solving the mystery. Over the years, Alice's father, Howard Barnes, dedicated his life to uncovering the truth, driving thousands of miles to track down leads. He even feared retaliation for his investigations, believing that his life, too, was in danger due to his inquiries into the Minutemen. Also, thank you to Discord community member D. Dodge Silver for this excellent recommendation. Hey everyone, it's Jimmy here, just reminding you to like and subscribe and to hit the notification bell. Also, be sure to join up on Discord and be part of the community. The Discord is very active and has over 150 members at this point. The were hyena is a figure in African and Middle Eastern folklore, with stories originating across different regions like Ethiopia, Somalia, the Lake Chad area, North Africa, and Iran. Unlike the European werewolf, these creatures often start as animals that shift into human form during the day. In East African traditions, particularly among the Ethiopian Amhara people, were hyenas, known as Buddha, are associated with blacksmiths who possess supernatural abilities. These abilities include the power to shapeshift at will and wield the evil eye. Historically, these myths reinforced social divisions, particularly targeting marginalized communities like Beta Israel, Ethiopian Jews, who traditionally worked as blacksmiths. In Somalia, it's believed that rubbing oneself with a magic stick at night triggers the transformation into a were hyena called a Kori Ismaris. This ability allows one to temporarily transform into a hyena at night, and if the ritual is executed correctly, the individual will transform back into a human by morning. In the area around Lake Chad, local legend tells of villages populated by humans who appear normal during the day, but transform into hyenas at night. According to these legends, the hyena people living in these villages attempt to lure travelers in by making them feel safe and comfortable, only to consume them at nighttime. In medieval Iran, a medical text has been found which prescribes treatments for were hyenas, indicating that their existence was accepted in the region. In many stories, were hyenas are portrayed as grave robbers, adding to their fearsome reputation and drawing upon their association with hyenas who are well-known scavengers. This association with death, disease, and malevolent witchcraft only amplifies the fear they evoke, particularly in rural communities where belief in their existence persists to this day. This is yet another great cryptid-related suggestion from Orc Lord Dave, the Discord community's resident cryptid expert. The missing 411 phenomenon refers to a series of unexplained disappearances of people, often under mysterious circumstances, in national parks across North America. The term was coined by David Paulides, a former police detective, who began investigating these cases after being approached by park rangers. Paulides started compiling data on these disappearances and noticed patterns and clusters that defied conventional explanations. He published his findings in a series of books titled Missing 411, beginning in 2012. These works document hundreds of cases where individuals vanished without a trace, sometimes leaving behind baffling clues or occurring under inexplicable circumstances. Paulides identified several common factors in these cases. Victims often disappear near bodies of water during sudden weather changes or in areas with high granite content. Search dogs frequently fail to track the missing individuals, or they exhibit unusual behavior, such as refusing to search or losing the scent abruptly. Additionally, many victims are found in areas previously searched or in locations difficult to reach, raising questions about how they ended up there. Paulides has identified other more unusual factors, such as a supposed overrepresentation of people with German ancestry amongst the cases. The missing 411 phenomenon gained significant attention through media coverage, interviews, and YouTube channels. Critics of the missing 411 phenomenon argue that these cases can be attributed to natural causes, such as accidents, animal attacks, or exposure to the elements. They suggest that the perceived patterns are coincidental or result from selective data presentation. However, Paulides contends that the sheer number of cases with similar unusual characteristics points to something more sinister. Notably, Paulides has called for increased transparency and improved record keeping from government agencies regarding missing persons in national parks. He notes that obtaining information from the National Park Service can be challenging, as they don't maintain a comprehensive database of such cases. The Dead Sea Scrolls are a collection of ancient Jewish manuscripts discovered between 1947 and 1956 in 11 caves near Qumran, a site on the northwestern shore of the Dead Sea. They're considered one of the most significant archaeological finds of the 20th century, offering profound insights into early Jewish life and the origins of Christianity. The story of their discovery began in early 1947 when a young Bedouin shepherd lost a goat and went searching for it among the cliffs. He stumbled upon a cave and, curious, tossed a stone inside, hearing something shatter. Investigating further, he found clay jars containing scrolls wrapped in linen. Unaware of their value, the Bedouins sold the scrolls to antiquities dealers in Bethlehem. Word of the scrolls reached scholars, and in 1947, Professor Eleazar Sukenik of the Hebrew University managed to acquire 3 of them. Around the same time, Archbishop Samuel of the Syrian Orthodox Church purchased 4 scrolls. These initial 7 scrolls included the Great Isaiah Scroll, the Community Rule, and the Habakkuk Commentary, among others. Despite the turmoil of the time, archaeologists and scholars organized expeditions to explore the area further. Between 1949 and 1956, 10 more caves were discovered, yielding tens of thousands of fragments from over 900 manuscripts. The scrolls are written mainly in Hebrew, with some in Aramaic and a few in Greek. They date from the 3rd century BC to the 1st century AD, covering a critical period in Jewish history leading up to the destruction of the Second Temple by the Romans in 70 AD. One of the most remarkable findings is that the scrolls contain the oldest known copies of biblical texts, predating previously known manuscripts by about 1,000 years. The Great Isaiah Scroll, for example, is a complete copy of the Book of Isaiah and shows remarkable consistency with later versions. The other manuscripts provide a window into the life of a Jewish community that many scholars identify with the Essenes, a sect described by ancient historians like Josephus and Philo. Another notable find is the War Scroll, which details an apocalyptic battle between the Sons of Light and the Sons of Darkness, which will occur at the end of our timeline. I note that I did mention that the Dead Sea Scrolls are thought to be written by the Essenes. However, this is by no means universally accepted. Some propose that the scrolls were actually a sort of catalog of beliefs of various different sects active in the region at the time. The theory was these various groups had put aside their difference to store a collection of various texts from Jerusalem in the caves during times of crisis. Advocates of this hypothesis argue that if the scrolls hadn't been preserved in the caves, that the Romans would have, without a doubt, destroyed them. The publication history of the Dead Sea Scrolls was fraught with delays and controversies. Initially, a small team of scholars held exclusive access to the scrolls, leading to frustration within the academic community and with people generally. It wasn't until the 1990s that the Israel Antiquities Authority released high-resolution photographs, allowing wider scholarly engagement and accelerating research. While there has been much greater access to the Dead Sea Scrolls over the last 3 decades, some have speculated that the full contents of the scrolls have yet to be released. For instance, some speculate that there may be crucial information about Jesus Christ in the unreleased portion of the Dead Sea Scrolls, though this remains speculation at this time. Also, stay tuned because I'm going to be discussing a specific mysterious Dead Sea Scroll that functions as an ancient treasure map later on in this video. The disappearance of Dennis Martin on June 14, 1969, in the Great Smoky Mountains, remains a very unsettling, unsolved disappearance. The facts are fairly straightforward. Dennis, a 6-year-old boy from Tennessee, was on a Father's Day camping trip with his family. He was last seen at Spence Field, playing a game of hide-and-seek with his brother and a couple of other children. But from the moment he ran into the woods to hide, he was never seen again. Dennis's disappearance triggered an enormous search operation. Within hours, more than 240 people were scouring the rugged terrain, and that number eventually swelled to 1,400 volunteers, along with helicopters and search dogs. Despite all the effort, the searchers turned up no definitive trace of the boy, not even the bright red shirt that should have made him easy to spot. Rainstorms only complicated the situation, washing away potential clues and making search efforts dangerous and difficult. Even the involvement of a Green Beret unit, who unexpectedly appeared to assist, didn't provide any significant breakthroughs. Theories about what happened to Dennis have swirled for decades, and none can be entirely ruled out due to the lack of physical evidence. The most likely, at least according to park officials, is that Dennis wandered off, got lost, and succumbed to the elements or an accident in the rugged and unforgiving terrain of the Smokies. The area where he vanished is covered in dense vegetation, crisscrossed by creeks, and dotted with dangerous cliffs and crevices. Many believe that if Dennis had simply taken a wrong step, he could have easily fallen into one of these natural hazards, leading to his death without ever being found. However, some elements of the story have led to more sinister speculation. One of the more bizarre pieces of information comes from a family hiking near Rowan's Creek on the same day Dennis disappeared. They reported hearing a terrifying scream and then seeing a rough-looking man moving quickly through the woods. This man seemed to be carrying something over his shoulder, although the sighting occurred 7 miles away from where Dennis was last seen. Despite the chilling nature of this report, authorities were skeptical. They dismissed it due to the distance and the short time frame between the disappearance and the sighting. Still, the idea that Dennis could have been abducted by a stranger persists. Another theory points to the wildlife in the area. The Great Smoky Mountains are home to black bears, which are particularly dangerous when they emerge from hibernation. Some have speculated that a bear or even a wild boar could have attacked Dennis and dragged him away. While this might seem far-fetched to some, black bear attacks on humans, though rare, have been documented in the Smokies, and the thick underbrush could easily conceal an animal attack. Then there are some truly out-there ideas, such as those involving feral humans living in the Smoky Mountains. This theory is based more on local folklore than hard evidence, but it's been mentioned in connection to other disappearances in the region. Despite all the search efforts and countless hours spent poring over potential leads, no trace of Dennis has ever been found. A few years after his disappearance, a man looking for ginseng claimed to have discovered skeletal remains of a child near Big Hollow, not far from where Dennis vanished. However, the hunter didn't report his find until 1985, fearing legal trouble for his illegal harvesting of ginseng in the area. When a formal search of the area was conducted, no remains were found, leaving this potential clue as yet another frustrating dead end. Also, I'd have to think that the authorities would be willing to overlook a few ounces of ginseng in return for the resolution of a missing persons case. Something about that story just doesn't quite sit right with me. If you have any information about the disappearance of Dennis Martin, please contact the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. The mystery of the Oak Grove Jane Doe began on April 12, 1946, when a horrifying discovery was made near the Willamette River in Oak Grove, Oregon. A torso, wrapped in a burlap sack and weighed down with sash weights, was found floating in the water. This shocking find led to a string of gruesome discoveries over the next few months, as more body parts were recovered from the river. The torso, arms, legs, and finally the head of a middle-aged woman emerged bit by bit from the river, leaving investigators struggling to piece together just what happened to her. The initial discovery was made by hikers who spotted the suspicious package floating near the shore. The burlap sack containing the torso was bound with telephone wire, a detail that repeated itself in later finds. Within days, more remains were found, including the woman's arms and right thigh, similarly packaged and weighed down. The discovery of additional body parts continued through the summer of 1946, with her left thigh turning up in July and her head, devoid of eyes, being recovered in October. A significant portion of her remains, including her hands and feet, were never located. From the remains recovered, a pathologist at the University of Oregon determined that Oak Grove Jane Doe was a Caucasian woman, probably in her 40s or 50s. She was about 5 feet 2 inches to 5 feet 4 inches in height and weighed around 140 pounds. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head. Disturbingly, burn marks on her body suggested that a blowtorch had been used on her, likely while alive. Although investigators tried to trace her identity, they were hampered by the limited forensic technology available at the time. Early theories suggested she might have been a missing woman from Seattle named Marie Nastos, who had disappeared the previous year. This lead fizzled out as investigators couldn't establish a firm connection. Another lead centered on a local scandal involving a woman named Anna Schrader, who had disappeared under suspicious circumstances around the same time. Involved in an affair with a Portland police officer, she was believed by some crime writers to have been slain because she possessed sensitive information about the department. However, no concrete evidence linking Schrader to Oak Grove Jane Doe was ever uncovered. Law enforcement also explored connections to convict Roy Moore, who claimed to have slain a woman and disposed of her remains in the Malala River, another tributary of the Willamette. However, this investigation similarly went nowhere, as Moore failed to provide any verifiable details that tied him to the Oak Grove Jane Doe case. The case was revisited in 2004 when the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office reopened the investigation in hopes that advances in forensic science might finally shed light on the victim's identity. Unfortunately, much of the physical evidence, including the victim's dentures, jawbone, and even her clothing, had been lost sometime in the 1950s. This significant loss of evidence has made solving the case all but impossible, despite the best efforts of investigators. Unfortunately, given the loss of evidence and the passage of time, it looks as though this Jane Doe may forever be unknown. The concept of the witch's Sabbath has a rich and complex history that stretches back to medieval Europe. It was believed to be a gathering where witches convened to worship the devil, engage in forbidden rites, and practice malevolent magic. These nocturnal assemblies were thought to occur in secluded places like forests, mountains, or abandoned ruins, and were spoken of by locals in hushed tones and with fear. During the late Middle Ages and the early modern period, fear of witchcraft intensified. The publication of the Malleus Maleficarum in 1487 by Heinrich Kramer played a pivotal role in shaping perceptions of witchcraft and the witches' Sabbath. This treatise provided detailed descriptions of witches' practices, including the Sabbaths, and became a guide for inquisitors and witch hunters across Europe. The Malleus Maleficarum insisted that witches were predominantly, though not exclusively, women, asserting that female susceptibility to demonic influence stemmed from inherent moral weaknesses. Kramer described the Sabbath as a place where witches renounced their Christian faith, paid homage to the devil, and participated in physical unions with the devil or his representatives. Confessions obtained during witch trials often followed a similar pattern. Under extreme duress, accused individuals recounted attending Sabbaths where they engaged in heinous acts. These narratives, though coerced, reinforced the belief in a widespread diabolical conspiracy and justified the continuation of witch hunts. Artists like Francisco Goya portrayed the witches' Sabbath in his works, capturing the dark and ominous atmosphere associated with these gatherings. Also, if you're one of those people who just listens, I definitely encourage you to take a look at Goya's eerie depiction of a witch's Sabbath now. It looks like something from a black metal album cover, and honestly, I'm sure it's been used in that capacity. Regional folklore added unique elements to the concept of the witch's Sabbath. In Central Europe, it was associated with the Brocken Mountain in Germany, where witches were believed to meet on Walpurgis Night. Notably, this event honors Saint Walpurga, who was successful in converting the local tribal populations to Christianity, as well as having them denounce witchcraft. In Scotland, witches were said to conjure storms at their Sabbaths for the purposes of running merchant ships up against the rocks. The witches and their minions would then loot the ship for its wealth, and also to obtain what I will politely call reagents from the fallen sailors. Use your imagination. Such stories highlight how local events and fears could be incorporated into the broader narrative of witchcraft. By the 17th century, skepticism about the reality of the witches' Sabbath began to emerge. Thinkers challenged the existence of witchcraft and the validity of the Sabbath narratives. In modern times, the witches' Sabbath has been reinterpreted within neo-pagan and Wiccan movements. Practitioners often reinterpret the Sabbath positively. These gatherings celebrate nature, spirituality, and communal bonds rather than malevolent and evil events. Gerald Gardner, considered the founder of modern Wicca, incorporated elements of supposed historical witchcraft practices into the religion's rituals. But back to traditional witches' Sabbaths for one moment. Some scholars argue that these gatherings were misinterpretations of pre-Christian fertility rites and festivals. Other scholars have proposed theories about a pagan cult that survived Christianization, though such theories are generally considered to be untrue by mainstream academics. Chaos magic is an unconventional and highly flexible form of modern occultism that emphasizes personal experimentation and the fluidity of belief systems. Emerging in the late 20th century, chaos magic gained momentum in the 1970s with key texts such as Liber Null by Peter J. Carroll and the Book of Results by Ray Sherwin. These works laid the foundation for a practice rooted in pragmatism and innovation, allowing practitioners to draw from a wide range of magical traditions and psychological techniques. One of the most fundamental tenets of chaos magic is the concept of belief as a tool. Unlike other magical traditions that require adherence to specific deities or rituals, chaos magicians view belief itself as something that can be shaped and manipulated. The purpose of this twisting of ideas and beliefs is to achieve desired outcomes by whatever means necessary. This approach allows for a level of flexibility and adaptability that is rare in more traditional forms of magic. By shifting beliefs, the practitioner can adopt new perspectives, experiment with different techniques, and ultimately create a system of magic that is uniquely their own. The practice of sigilization, popularized by artist and occultist Austin Osman Spare, is a central technique in chaos magic. Sigils are symbols crafted to represent a specific intention or desire. The process involves creating a sigil, charging it with emotional or psychic energy, and then allowing it to sink into the subconscious mind, where it can work its magic unnoticed by the conscious mind. Another critical concept in chaos magic is gnosis, a heightened state of consciousness that is believed to increase the practitioner's ability to influence reality. Gnosis can be achieved through a variety of means, including meditation, chanting, drumming, and even more extreme practices such as sensory deprivation, physical exhaustion, or other activities. The goal is to bypass the rational mind and reach a state where the magician's will can operate more freely. This mirrors techniques found in other mystical traditions but is stripped of their religious or dogmatic frameworks, allowing the practitioner to remain untethered from any specific belief system. A defining feature of chaos magic is its embrace of paradigm shifting. Practitioners are encouraged to adopt and discard belief systems as necessary to achieve their magical goals. For instance, practitioners are encouraged to adopt completely different worldviews depending on something as simple as the roll of a set of dice. For instance, a certain roll could indicate that the practitioner adopts a Norse pagan worldview for 6 months. Another roll, for instance, could have the same person adopting a Taoist worldview for the next 6 years. This process, often referred to as belief as a tool, allows the magician to use various cultural or psychological models to shape their reality. The fluidity with which chaos magicians shift their paradigms is both a strength and a source of controversy. Some critics argue that this approach lacks the ethical grounding found in more structured occult traditions. However, advocates of chaos magic argue that its adaptability is precisely what makes it effective in an era where rigid belief systems often fail to accommodate the complexities of modern life. Fundamentally, chaos magic is an occult system which rejects the existence of absolute truth and further rejects all religious, spiritual, and occult traditions that came before it. That's not to say chaos magic rejects the individual ideas of these traditions, though, just the conclusions of the systems. The Lonnie Zamora alien encounter occurred on April 24, 1964, in Socorro, New Mexico. Zamora, a local police officer, reported witnessing a strange object and beings that appeared to be extraterrestrial in nature, an event that remains unexplained even after extensive investigation. The event unfolded in the late afternoon while Zamora was on patrol, chasing a speeding vehicle. His attention shifted when he heard a loud roar and saw a bright blue and orange flame in the sky. He initially suspected an explosion at a nearby dynamite shack. Following the noise, he drove into a nearby desert area where he claimed to see an unusual egg-shaped object resting on 4 legs. Standing near the object were 2 small humanoid figures wearing white coveralls. As he approached, the object emitted another loud roar and began ascending vertically, leaving behind scorched bushes and indentations in the ground where it had rested. Startled, Zamora took cover behind his car and watched as the object rose into the sky, disappearing without leaving a visible trail or smoke. The object, Zamora described, had no visible windows or doors, but displayed a peculiar red insignia. The incident was soon investigated by local authorities, the FBI, and the U.S. Air Force under Project Blue Book, the U.S. government's primary program for investigating UFO sightings. Investigators confirmed that the physical evidence at the scene, including burnt vegetation, landing marks, and metal scrapings, supported Zamora's account. Zamora's reputation for honesty played a significant role in how seriously the event was taken. Notably, unlike many other individuals who have had close encounters with alien entities, Zamora never sought to profit from his experience, avoiding all forms of press or publicity. Known as a reliable officer, he had no history of making extraordinary claims or seeking attention, which led many to believe that his account was sincere. Further, over the years, multiple witnesses from the area reported seeing an object in the sky around the same time, lending further credence to Zamora's story. Despite thorough investigations, including interviews with Zamora and other witnesses, the official conclusion of Project Blue Book labeled the event as unidentified. No conventional explanation, such as the old reliable experimental aircraft or weather balloon, could be confirmed. The case stood out to Dr. J. Allen Hynek, one of the leading astronomers involved in Project Blue Book, as particularly compelling. He would later remark that Zamora's encounter was one of the most puzzling he had ever examined. Over the years, some skeptics have suggested alternate explanations, including the possibility that the event was a hoax or prank orchestrated by local college students. Others have speculated that Zamora may have inadvertently witnessed a test of a secret military or NASA project, potentially a lunar lander prototype. However, no definitive proof supporting these theories has emerged, and the incident remains one of the most well-documented yet unresolved UFO sightings in history. One of the more unusual claims is that the entire event was fabricated by the city to develop their tourism industry. There's no apparent evidence to support it, but I just had to throw it in because it's such an off-the-wall idea. I guess it's theoretically possible that the people of Socorro wanted to get that Roswell bag, so to speak. Hey everyone, it's Jimmy here, just reminding you to like and subscribe and to hit the notification bell. Also, if you're enjoying the video so far, don't forget to hit the share button and send my video to your friends and family. And if you want to take it to the next level, check out the Patreon or the YouTube membership and support the channel for as little as $1 a month. The concept of the evil eye is one of the oldest and most widespread superstitions in human history. It's believed that a malevolent glare, often fueled by envy or jealousy, can bring misfortune, illness, or even death upon the person at whom it's directed. This belief transcends cultures, religions, and continents, indicating a shared human concern about the power of negative intentions. From ancient civilizations to modern societies, the fear of the evil eye has influenced everything from art, literature, to daily practices. Historically, the evil eye is thought to date back to ancient Mesopotamia, around 3000 BC, where amulets and inscriptions were used to ward off its effects. The Mesopotamians crafted eye-shaped amulets out of materials like lapis lazuli and carnelian, believing that these objects could deflect the harmful gaze. In ancient Greece, philosophers like Plato and Plutarch wrote about the evil eye, suggesting that certain individuals possessed the power to harm others merely by looking at them. The Greeks believed that the eyes were the windows to the soul, and that envy could emanate as a destructive force. The Roman poet Virgil also referenced the evil eye in his work, highlighting its prevalence in Roman society. Romans used symbols and charms called fascinum to protect against the evil eye, integrating these practices into their daily lives. In the Middle East, the evil eye is deeply ingrained in Islamic culture. The Quran mentions the concept indirectly, and many Muslims believe in the importance of protecting themselves from envious gazes. The belief is so widespread that phrases like Masha Allah, God has willed it, are used to express appreciation without invoking jealousy. In countries like Iran and Iraq, people often recite specific prayers or carry amulets inscribed with Quranic verses to safeguard against the evil eye. Mediterranean cultures, especially in countries like Turkey, Greece, and Italy, place significant emphasis on the evil eye. In Turkey, the Nazar amulet, a blue and white eye-shaped charm, is commonly used to protect against the evil eye. These amulets are found everywhere, from homes and cars to jewelry and clothing, serving as constant guardians against negative energies. In modern Greece, the evil eye is known as kakomati, and similar protective charms are prevalent. Greeks might spit 3 times after praising someone to prevent the evil eye from affecting them. In South Asia, mothers often apply a kind of special makeup around their children's eyes, or place a black dot on their foreheads to ward off the evil eye. African cultures have their own interpretations of the evil eye. In sub-Saharan Africa, protective measures include wearing amulets or participating in rituals conducted by spiritual leaders. In North Africa, the concept is intertwined with local beliefs and often involves the use of hand-shaped amulets known as Hamsa or Hand of Fatima, which are believed to provide protection. Latin American countries also acknowledge the evil eye, known as mal de ojo in Spanish-speaking regions. Notably, unlike other versions of the evil eye, this version can be cast indirectly without intended malevolent intent, just through insecurity. In Mexico and Central America, it's believed that infants are particularly susceptible. To protect them, parents often adorn babies with red bracelets or necklaces featuring an eye charm. In some regions, holy men and women perform rituals to cure those afflicted by the evil eye, using herbs and prayers to absorb the negative energy. The persistence of the evil eye belief highlights a universal human concern about envy and the potential harm it can cause. Stacey Arras disappeared in Yosemite National Park on July 17, 1981, while on a trip with her father and others. At 14, she was a confident and capable teenager from Saratoga, California, highly familiar with outdoor activities. The group had arrived at Sunrise High Sierra Camp, a scenic yet remote area at 9,400 feet above sea level. Stacey changed into more comfortable clothes, planning to explore the surroundings and take photographs by a nearby lake. She asked her father to join her on the walk, but he declined. Instead, a 72-year-old man from their party, Gerald Stewart, accompanied her for the first part of the walk, before sitting down to rest while Stacey continued alone. From that point, Stacey vanished without a trace. According to witnesses, she was last seen heading towards the lake, stepping behind a cluster of trees and disappearing from view. Despite an extensive search involving helicopters, ground crews, and dog teams over a 10-day period, the only evidence ever found was the lens from her camera near the tree line. Her disappearance sparked significant attention because of its suddenness and the lack of any clear explanation. One of the striking elements of this case is how rapidly Stacey went missing. She was within sight of her group until she entered the trees, making it unlikely that she could have become lost so close to the campsite. Speculation about what happened to Stacey runs the gamut from theories of abduction to the possibility of her falling into the rugged, unforgiving terrain to an animal attack. Chernobog, often translated as the Black God, is a figure from the mythology of the Palabian Slavs. Notably, given that Chernobog is only known from Christian sources, some scholars have speculated that he is a fictional deity created by Christian missionaries to portray the Palabian Slavs as satanic. Chernobog is depicted as a dark deity associated with misfortune, death, and chaos. His counterpart is Belobog, the white god, who represents light and goodness, though the existence of Belobog is even more uncertain and debated. The earliest known mention of Chernobog comes from the 12th century in Helmold of Bosau's Chronica Slavorum, where he described the worship of a god of misfortune. However, the historical record is scarce, and most of what we know about Chernobog comes from later interpretations and writings. And it's important to take everything further I say about Chernobog with a grain of salt. Because, like I said, this god may not have existed at all. Unlike many other gods, Chernobog was not worshipped in the same sense as deities of prosperity or fertility. He was feared and placated, as he was believed to bring about calamities, accidents, and other forms of bad luck. Ancient Palabian Slavs saw misfortune, disease, and natural disasters as divine interventions, and they attributed these events to gods like Chernobog. Chernobog may have also played a role as a winter deity, associated with the darkest part of the year, which also reflects ancient Slavic beliefs about the cyclical nature of time. This concept fits into broader pagan traditions, where seasons and natural cycles were embodied by powerful deities. The Copper Scroll, found in 1952 at Qumran near the Dead Sea, stands out as one of the most unique artifacts discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls. Unlike the parchment and papyrus used for the other scrolls, this particular scroll was written on copper sheets, mixed with a bit of tin to form an alloy, and then rolled into two separate parts. The scroll is far from a religious or philosophical text. Instead, it serves as an inventory of hidden treasures. The scroll details 64 locations of significant caches of gold, silver, and other valuable items scattered across different areas, primarily around the Judean wilderness. The writing on the copper scroll itself differs markedly from typical Hebrew texts of the time, and it has perplexed scholars since its discovery. The language is a version of Hebrew, but in a form that appears to be deliberately encoded. Many of the names of the locations mentioned are cryptic or otherwise unknown, and scholars believe that they might refer to landmarks familiar only to the people of that era or to a specific group. What makes this even more fascinating is the idea that some of the writing appears to have been done by an unskilled scribe. This has led to speculation that the scroll was copied from another source, by someone who wasn't entirely fluent in the language. These features make translation and interpretation a challenge, and they add to the mystery surrounding the scroll's origins and authenticity. Scholars differ on when exactly the scroll was written. Some believe it dates back to around 100 AD, a time after the destruction of the Qumran settlement by the Romans. This timeline suggests that the treasure might have been hidden to keep it from being looted during times of conflict, possibly even by the Romans themselves. There are also theories suggesting that the treasure described might have been hidden by followers of the Bar Kokhba revolt, an armed uprising against Roman rule in the early 2nd century AD. However, there's still no consensus on the exact historical context or who authored the scroll, and whether the treasure was real or symbolic remains an open debate. The Copper Scroll's contents are remarkably detailed. It lists the treasures in a matter-of-fact way, often specifying exact distances, such as 14 cubits under the steps in the salt pit, followed by what is hidden there, gold, silver, or other items. Despite the specifics, none of the locations have been definitively found. Some have attempted to use the scroll as a literal guide, but without success, as many of the landmarks mentioned have either been lost to history or were purposefully kept obscure. Interestingly, the choice of copper as the medium for this scroll likely wasn't arbitrary. Copper is far more durable than parchment or papyrus, especially in the harsh, arid climate of the Judean desert. The fact that the scroll is a treasure list and that it was engraved in copper suggests that it was meant to be preserved. I have a personal theory that someone might have discovered the treasures detailed in the copper scroll during the 20th century and decided not to go public with it. Given the detailed nature of the scroll's instructions and the numerous expeditions that have sought the treasure, I think it's entirely possible that someone found the caches and chose to keep it a secret. This could have been due to fears of legal repercussions, potential claims by the Israeli government or international bodies, or simply a desire to avoid the chaos and attention such a discovery would bring. Basically, if this wealth is real, it might already long be in private hands. The Travis Walton abduction incident took place on November 5, 1975, near Heber, Arizona. Walton, a 22-year-old logger, was working with 6 other men in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest when they reportedly encountered an unusual, glowing, disc-shaped object hovering in the sky. Walton approached the object despite his crew's warnings, and according to his account, he was struck by a beam of light from the craft, which rendered him unconscious. The other men, frightened by the sight, fled but returned shortly after, only to find Walton missing. This set off a 5-day search that garnered national media attention. For 5 days, Walton remained missing, and law enforcement initially suspected foul play. His co-workers underwent polygraph tests to determine if they had slain Walton, but most of them passed, while one test was deemed inconclusive. Walton's sudden reappearance on November 12, 1975, added to the intrigue. He was found in a state of confusion, claiming to have been abducted by alien beings. Walton later described his experience aboard a spacecraft, where he encountered both small, gray humanoid beings and more human-like figures, which he referred to as Nordic aliens. These entities, according to Walton, conducted experiments on him, although he managed to fight off his captors at one point. In the years following the incident, Walton has maintained his story, recounting it in interviews, a book titled The Walton Experience, and the 1993 film Fire in the Sky. The other men involved have largely stood by their version of the events as well, despite skepticism and accusations that the incident was a hoax or a publicity stunt. In 2021, one of the witnesses to the abduction recanted his support of Walton's story due to Walton seeking to remake a movie without his involvement. The 2 men later reconciled, and the witness retracted this statement and said that he once again supports the abduction story. The Gogenji Red Wall, part of the Gogenji Temple in Nakatsu, Oita Prefecture, has an extremely dark mystery associated with it. Known as the Red Wall Temple, its distinctive red walls have drawn attention for centuries, due in part to a dramatic story from Japan's feudal period. According to local lore, the temple's walls became stained by samurai-based slaughter following a violent 16th century conflict between rival factions. In the chaos of battle, many lives were lost, and the temple walls reportedly turned permanently red due to the staining. Though monks tried to plaster over the stains, they continued to reappear. Eventually, the walls were painted red, supposedly to hide the stains permanently, and they've remained red ever since. These red walls of Gogenji create a stark contrast to the otherwise traditional temple architecture, which features dark roofs and colors typical of Japanese religious structures. This was another great suggestion by Discord community member Guy 2, and just another reminder to join up on the Discord to give your suggestions. Hecate is a mysterious figure in Greek mythology, revered for her connection to the underworld, death, witchcraft, magic, and the supernatural. Although her exact origins are debated, she is often described as the daughter of the Titans Perses and Asteria, a lineage that gave her some dominion over the heavens, earth, and sea. Unlike many Titans, Hecate retained her powers under the reign of Zeus, signifying her enduring authority across different realms. What sets Hecate apart from other deities is her role at the crossroads, both literally and symbolically. She was frequently depicted as a 3-faced goddess, representing her ability to see the past, present, and future, or as a figure standing at the junction of life and death, the physical and spiritual worlds. This triple form, which later associated her with other goddesses like Persephone and Demeter, emphasized her power over transitions and boundaries. Her presence at crossroads made her a protector of travelers, but more ominously, also a guardian of the dead. In fact, ancient Greeks placed statues of Hecate at the entrance of homes and cities to ward off evil spirits. Hecate's connection to the underworld is a core aspect of her identity. One of the most famous myths involving Hecate is her participation in the abduction of Persephone. While other gods watched passively, Hecate helped Demeter search for her daughter. After Persephone's descent into the underworld, Hecate remained her guide and companion, further solidifying her role as an underworld-related deity. One of the more intriguing elements of Hecate's mythos is her association with witchcraft. She was a goddess of spells and all magic, and in particular necromancy. Her symbols reflect this dark mysticism, including the key, representing her control over the boundary between the living and the dead, torches, for lighting the way through the darkness, and serpents. Dogs and wolves also play a key role in her imagery. Their howling was said to signal her approach as she wandered the earth at night, accompanied by the souls of the dead. Hecate continues to be revered in a variety of neo-pagan and modern magic and mystical traditions. Check out my channel for over 100 hours of content related to unsolved mysteries, true crime, urban legends, the occult, religions and mythology, and more. Shout out to my patrons Iced Mocha, Kurt the Squirt, Monoxide Wendigo, Jeffer Metcalf, Z-Volts, Courtney Hammett, Out of Gray's Mind, Cap, Dionysus. Silba Rose, Franz Tech, Unknown Delusions, Faye, Jack Russell, Boomslang, Spookiest Becky, Vespertine, Metanova, Will Roan, Crab Nebula, and Blasphemous. Everything Empty Always Alone is a highly unsettling YouTube channel that I discovered a few days back while browsing the X-board on 4chan for ideas for a new occult video. As far as I can tell, this channel has received virtually no attention yet. The channel, run by an enigmatic individual named Corey, documents his alleged visits to alternate dimensions. Each video takes viewers through eerily empty locations, abandoned cities, desolate government buildings, vacant Walmarts, and ghostly casinos, creating a chilling sense of isolation and mystery. Corey claims that these spaces exist in other dimensions parallel to our own, where civilization vanished or perhaps never existed. He provides little detail as to how he travels to this parallel dimension, though he claims he is being assisted by an alien entity who has provided him the technology to do so. With each upload, he attempts to provide proof of these mysterious journeys, inviting his viewers to explore unsettling, quiet worlds. However, the authenticity of Corey's work remains uncertain, with many speculating that the videos are either the result of creative editing, AI-generated effects, or even part of an ARG. One theory that explains the eerie allure of Corey's videos is that they are expertly crafted using traditional creative editing techniques. Filmmakers and video creators have long used advanced editing software such as Adobe Premiere Pro and After Effects to achieve impressive visual effects. By combining multiple shots, masking objects, or even overlaying images, it's possible to create the illusion of a completely empty space. Corey's videos could be edited to make bustling locations appear deserted, carefully removing people, cars, and other signs of life to manufacture the illusion of solitude. The use of such techniques has become increasingly accessible, as even amateur filmmakers can use masking and layering to erase elements from a scene. For example, some scenes in movies use green screens to manipulate and replace backgrounds, which could be similarly applied here to create eerie, seemingly uninhabited environments. In Corey's case, this would involve shooting in real locations and later modifying the footage to remove other people. This editing approach, while impressive, would imply that his so-called journeys are rooted not in the paranormal, but in the art of film manipulation. Another plausible theory is that Corey is leveraging AI technology to achieve his startling visual effects. AI driven video editing tools are increasingly capable of modifying video content in ways that were once only accessible to professional film studios. Through machine learning and algorithms, these AI tools can analyze frames, detect people, and seamlessly remove them while maintaining the integrity of the environment. Given that Corey's channel involves several eerie, complex scenarios of complete emptiness, AI might offer the most efficient way to alter his footage. For example, AI editing tools could potentially erase people from busy locations such as shopping malls or casinos, leaving only the empty infrastructure. Using AI might also allow Corey to save time by automating the process, while achieving a level of realism that may go undetected by a casual viewer. Some viewers have suggested that Everything Empty Always Alone could be an experimental film project or a form of digital performance art. Corey's videos bear the hallmarks of a horror or science fiction narrative, following a lone protagonist exploring deserted spaces and raising questions about isolation and existential emptiness. If the channel is indeed a film project, it would align with genres that explore dystopian and surreal themes. Similar projects have garnered large followings by blending reality with fiction, where the viewer's belief in the story's authenticity is part of the experience. If Corey's work is a film project, he could be following in the footsteps of other filmmakers who use YouTube as a platform to experiment with unconventional storytelling. The concept of an alternate reality game also fits well with the content Corey produces. ARGs are interactive storytelling experiences that use real-world elements and online platforms to engage audiences. They often involve puzzles, hidden clues, and community involvement to piece together a narrative, with creators deliberately obscuring the boundary between reality and fiction. The channel could be an elaborate ARG, where Corey, as the central figure, uses the videos to lead viewers down a rabbit hole, subtly dropping clues to increase engagement. If Corey's channel is an ARG, the evidence he presents of alternate dimensions may be intentionally ambiguous, designed to spark debate and encourage viewers to question their perceptions. These channels thrive on this level of ambiguity, as they draw viewers deeper into the narrative by challenging them to uncover hidden details. The channel's cryptic nature, the absence of explanations, and the visually compelling yet mystifying videos could all point to a carefully orchestrated ARG meant to immerse fans. In this context, the emptiness of the cities and the isolated locations serve as thematic elements meant to convey an atmosphere of uncertainty rather than provide genuine proof of parallel worlds. At this point, the true nature of Everything Empty Always Alone remains a mystery, and each theory holds merit. What can be said is that the channel is highly engaging and proves that modern technology has made it easier to blur the lines between reality and fiction. Another theory suggests that he may be attempting to tap into the popularity of liminal spaces. Liminal spaces, such as empty malls, abandoned cities, or deserted government buildings, captivate audiences. They offer familiar settings where people feel unfamiliar in their emptiness. By exploring these vacant realms, Corey's content appeals to those drawn to the haunting atmosphere of places that exist on the fringes, between use and abandonment, familiarity and alienation. In a digital age where nearly anything can be manipulated, fabricated, or enhanced, it's difficult to definitively prove the authenticity of content like Corey's. Anyway, I've provided a link to the channel and I would encourage you to check it out and let me know what you think of it. Also, I'm thinking about doing a deep dive video on this channel if and when more content is posted, so let me know if that would be something you're into as well. In June 2016, 36-year-old Joseph Balderas vanished near Nome, Alaska, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. Originally from Lubbock, Texas, Balderas had moved to Alaska in 2014 to work as a law clerk at the Nome Second District Court. An avid outdoorsman, he embraced activities like hiking, fishing, biking, running, and kayaking. On June 24, 2016, Balderas left his job at the courthouse and drove away in his pickup truck. He was reported missing on June 27th after failing to show up for work and being unreachable by his fiancée. That same day, his truck was found abandoned at mile marker 44 on the Nome Council Highway. Inside the unlocked vehicle were his backpack containing fishing gear, a pair of waders, and boots. There was no sign of Balderas at the scene. Search efforts commenced immediately, involving multiple agencies including the Alaska State Troopers, the U.S. Coast Guard, Nome Volunteer Fire Department Search and Rescue, and the Park Service. Volunteers also participated extensively conducting ground searches on foot and by all-terrain vehicles. Despite extensive efforts, no trace of Balderas was found. Investigations revealed that Balderas had communicated with his fiancée, Megan Ryder, on the morning of June 25th, stating he planned to go fishing. This was their last communication. A driver reported seeing Balderas standing by his truck on June 25th. Another sighting placed him driving on the same road on June 26th. However, these leads did not yield further information. Some have speculated that these two drivers actually saw him on the same day, with the confusion arising from the event being unremarkable on the day in question. Authorities considered various theories, including the possibility of a bear attack, given the area's wildlife. However, search teams found no evidence to support this. The terrain's dense vegetation and presence of bears posed challenges, but the lack of any signs of struggle or remains led investigators to question this theory. Another angle explored was foul play. Balderas's roommate initially provided inconsistent statements about his whereabouts during the weekend of the disappearance. Despite these inconsistencies, no evidence directly linked him to Balderas's disappearance. A search of their shared residence revealed no signs of foul play, and it appears that his roommate is not a suspect in his disappearance. In June 2017, nearly a year after his disappearance, a jury declared Balderas legally dead. The decision was based on the extensive but fruitless search efforts and the absence of any contact or activity from Balderas. The jury, however, could not determine the cause of death, leaving the circumstances of his disappearance unresolved. His family continues to seek information, offering a reward for leads that could resolve the case. If you have any information about the disappearance of Joseph Balderas, please contact the Alaska State Troopers. In the early hours of April 16, 2013, a meticulously coordinated assault targeted Pacific Gas and Electric Company's Metcalf transmission substation near San Jose, California. This incident, often referred to as the Metcalf sniper attack, exposed significant vulnerabilities in the United States electrical grid infrastructure. At 12:58 a.m., assailants accessed an underground vault near U.S. Route 101 and severed fiber optic telecommunications cables, disrupting landline and mobile services in the vicinity. Shortly thereafter, additional cables belonging to Level 3 communications were cut, leading to further communication outages. These actions effectively isolated the substation, hindering immediate detection and response efforts. Around 1:31 a.m., surveillance footage captured muzzle flashes as gunmen opened fire on the substation's transformers. Over a span of 19 minutes, they fired more than 100 rounds, primarily targeting the radiators of 17 transformers. This caused the equipment to overheat and shut down due to the loss of cooling oil. The attackers demonstrated precise marksmanship and strategic planning, aiming to inflict maximum damage while avoiding immediate detection. Despite the severity of the attack, no power outages occurred. Grid operators managed to reroute electricity, ensuring continuous supply to the Silicon Valley area. However, the assault resulted in over $15 million in damages and required nearly a month to fully repair the substation. The FBI launched an investigation but did not specifically classify the event, citing a lack of evidence linking it to any organization. Some experts, including former Federal Energy Regulatory Commission Chairman John Wellinghoff, disagreed, labeling it a sophisticated and coordinated attack intended to cause terror and disruption. In October 2015, the Department of Homeland Security suggested the possibility of insider involvement, noting that the attackers exhibited knowledge of the substation's layout and vulnerabilities. This theory arose from the precision of the attack and the prior disabling of communication lines, indicating a deep understanding of the facility's operations. In response to the attack, PG&E announced plans to invest $100 million over 3 years to enhance security at its substations. Measures included installing opaque fencing, advanced surveillance systems, and other physical security enhancements to deter and detect future threats. The Metcalfe incident served as a wake-up call for the energy sector, highlighting the physical vulnerabilities of critical infrastructure. Prior to this event, much of the focus had been on cybersecurity threats, often overshadowing the risks posed by physical attacks. The assault demonstrated that well-coordinated physical attacks could have severe consequences, potentially leading to widespread power outages, if not promptly addressed. Despite extensive investigations, the perpetrators of the Metcalfe attack remain unidentified. The lack of arrests or credible leads has led to various theories, ranging from disgruntled employees to organized groups testing the grid's vulnerabilities. The precision and coordination of the attack suggests that the individuals involved possessed significant knowledge and expertise. Some have suggested that this attack was an act of sabotage carried out by a state actor. However, there hasn't been any evidence to support this claim. What's up, Lazy Chill Zone fam? It's Jimmy here as usual. Quick shout out to remind you to light up that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the chill vibes coming your way. I'm aiming for a big goal, 15,000 subscribers by year end, and I know we can get there with the support of all you amazing people. And if you want to take it a step further, consider joining the crew through YouTube memberships or Patreon. Your support keeps this channel going strong, and I'm so grateful to each and every one of you. On August 31st, 2020, 33-year-old Florence Okpieluk was reported missing in Nome, Alaska. She was last seen around 4 p.m. that day, leaving a tent on West Beach, approximately 1 to 2 miles from town. Her jacket, shoes, and socks were found outside the tent, but she hasn't been heard from since. Florence, an Inupiat woman from Wales, Alaska, had moved to Nome in 2013 to provide better health care and education for her daughter. She worked as a patient financial services representative at the Norton Sound Health Corporation. Described by friends and family as a loving and caring mother, she was deeply involved in her 6-year-old daughter's life, sharing custody with the child's father. The search for Florence began promptly after her disappearance. The Nome Police Department, with assistance from the FBI, Alaska State Troopers, the Nome Volunteer Fire Department Search and Rescue Team, conducted extensive searches. Community members also participated, forming search parties to scour the region by day and holding prayer vigils by night. Despite these efforts, no significant leads emerged. In September 2020, authorities located a pickup truck captured on security footage near the Nome port on August 30th, a day before Florence was reported missing. The driver was identified and interviewed, but no further information was released to protect the investigation's integrity. Florence's family and friends have expressed frustration over the lack of progress in the investigation. They've described her as a devoted mother and a beloved community member, emphasizing that her disappearance is out of character. Her sister, Blair, in an interview with Alaska Public Media, provided a somewhat different view on Florence, noting that she was struggling with alcoholism and had recent legal troubles. However, her sister was clear that Florence always remained extremely committed to her daughter and her family in general, despite these issues. As of November 2024, Florence's case remains unsolved. Law enforcement continues to actively seek information, urging anyone with knowledge of her whereabouts to contact the Alaska State Troopers or Nome Police Department. The term Socratic paradox refers to several seemingly contradictory statements attributed to the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates. Among these, the most renowned is his assertion, "I know that I know nothing." This declaration encapsulates Socrates' belief that true wisdom lies in recognizing one's own ignorance. He posited that many individuals, confident in their knowledge, are unaware of their own lack of understanding. By admitting his ignorance, Socrates considered himself wiser than those who falsely believed they possessed knowledge. This perspective is evident in Plato's Apology, where Socrates recounts his quest to find someone wiser than himself, only to conclude that his wisdom stems from acknowledging his ignorance. Another aspect of the Socratic paradox is the claim that no one does wrong willingly. Socrates argued that all wrongdoing is a result of ignorance. If individuals truly understood what was right, they would act accordingly. This viewpoint suggests that moral failings arise not from malicious intent, but from a lack of knowledge. In dialogues such as Plato's Meno, Socrates explores this idea, proposing that virtue is a form of knowledge and therefore can be taught. Socrates' method of inquiry, known as the Socratic method, involved asking probing questions to expose contradictions in his interlocutor's beliefs, rather than proving answers. This technique aimed to dismantle false knowledge and encourage the pursuit of true understanding. By guiding others to recognize their ignorance, Socrates believed they could begin the journey toward genuine wisdom. The Socratic paradox challenges traditional notions of knowledge and virtue. By asserting that he knew nothing, Socrates highlighted the limitations of human understanding and the importance of continuous questioning. His belief that wrongdoing stems from ignorance rather than intent shifts the focus from punishment to education as a means of fostering moral behavior. These ideas have profoundly influenced Western philosophy, encouraging a critical examination of knowledge, ethics, and the human condition. The Labankir Devil is a lake monster said to inhabit Lake Labankir in Siberia's Sakha Republic. This remote lake, situated at an altitude of over 3,000 feet, spans approximately 17 square miles and reaches depths of up to 250 feet. The lake's unique geological features, including anomalous fissures and underwater trenches, have fueled local folklore about a mysterious aquatic entity. Reports of the Labankir Devil date back to the 19th century, with locals describing a massive, aggressive creature possessing a large mouth filled with sharp teeth. These accounts often attribute unexplained disappearances of people and livestock to the creature, reinforcing its fearsome reputation among residents. In 1953, Soviet geologist Viktor Tverdoklubov led an expedition to Lake Labankir and documented a personal encounter with the alleged monster. He described observing a dark gray, oval-shaped body moving across the water, featuring two symmetrical white spots resembling eyes and a protrusion akin to a fin. Tverdoklubov noted that only a portion of the creature was visible, suggesting a massive submerged body. Scientific interest in the Labankir Devil persisted into the 21st century. In 2013, a team from the Russian Geographical Society conducted a winter dive into Lake Labinkir, aiming to explore its depths and investigate the monster legend. During their exploration, the team reportedly discovered skeletal remains and a jawbone of a large animal using underwater scanners, though these claims lack physical evidence and remain unverified. Despite numerous expeditions and studies, no conclusive evidence supports the existence of the Labinkir Devil. Skeptics suggest that sightings may result from misidentifications of known animals or natural phenomena. For instance, large fish such as pike inhabit the lake and could be mistaken for a monstrous creature. Additionally, the lake's unusual geological features, like its deep fissures and underwater trenches, might create optical illusions or unusual water movements that observers interpret as a living entity. The Pseudomonarchia Demonum, or False Monarchy of Demons, is a seminal 16th century grimoire by Johann Weyer, first appearing in 1577. This text is an extensive catalog of demons, providing a hierarchy of 69 spirits, and it outlines the proper rituals and hours to summon them. Weyer's work served as a precursor to other famous texts on demonology, such as the Lesser Key of Solomon. Weyer was a Dutch physician who studied under the renowned occultist Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa. However, unlike other demonologists of his era, Weyer's approach was distinct. He was critical of the witch hunts prevalent during the period, and often mocked the perceived power of demonic forces. In his view, while these demons may have been real forces, they were ultimately weak and ineffective in comparison to the forces of the kingdom of heaven, hence the title of the work. Another interpretation of the text suggests it was intended to be a skeptical take on demonology. Supporters of this theory note that sigils used for summoning magic are not included in the text itself. Under this theory, the work is essentially satire, and every subsequent work that relied upon it simply didn't get the memo that it wasn't to be taken at face value. Another prominent theory which builds upon the last theory is that Weyer had to present the book as satirical so that he wasn't accused of summoning and controlling demons himself. But that's enough about the intentions of the author. Let's get back to the grimoire itself. In this text, each demon is given a title, ranks in the infernal hierarchy, and jobs in the bureaucracy of hell, and the corresponding legions of demons and fallen angels they command. These descriptions were not merely theoretical for those who read the grimoire. They provided practical guidance for those seeking to counter their power or to harness their power through summoning rituals. In the early 14th century, the Mali Empire was a dominant force in West Africa, renowned for its wealth, culture, and expansive trade networks. One of the most intriguing narratives from this period involves Mansa Abubakari II, who is said to have embarked on a transatlantic voyage. According to some, he potentially reached the Americas nearly 2 centuries before Christopher Columbus. The primary account of this expedition comes from the 14th century Arab historian al-Umari. He documented a conversation with Mansa Musa, Abubakari's successor, during Musa's pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324. According to al-Umari, Mansa Musa recounted that Abubakari II was fascinated by the Atlantic Ocean and sought to discover what lay beyond its horizon. He reportedly commissioned a fleet of 200 ships, instructing the captains to sail westward and return only after reaching the ocean's end or exhausting their provisions. After a long period, only one ship returned, with its captain describing a powerful current that swallowed the other vessels. Undeterred, Abubakari is said to have assembled an even larger fleet of 2,000 ships and personally led an expedition into the Atlantic, leaving Mansa Musa to govern in his absence. Neither Abubakari nor his fleet returned, and Mansa Musa ascended to the throne. The veracity of this account has been a subject of debate among historians. Some argue that the Mali Empire possessed the maritime capabilities and resources to undertake such a voyage. The empire's wealth, derived from gold and salt trade, could have financed large-scale expeditions. Additionally, the Malians had access to the Niger River, which facilitated internal trade and could have provided experience in navigation. However, oceanic navigation presents challenges distinct from riverine travel. There's no evidence whatsoever to suggest that West African civilizations had developed the necessary maritime technology to do so in the 13th century. Proponents of the theory that Malians reached the Americas before Columbus point to various pieces of circumstantial evidence. Some suggest that certain cultural similarities between West African and indigenous American societies indicate pre-Columbian contact. For instance, similarities in pyramid construction and agricultural practices have been noted by proponents of this theory. However, these parallels can often be attributed to convergent evolution, the independent development of similar solutions to comparable challenges, rather than direct contact. Another argument centers on reports from Columbus himself. During his third voyage, Columbus noted that the indigenous people of the Americas possessed gold-tipped spears, which they claimed to have obtained from black traders who had come from the east. Some interpret this as evidence of African traders reaching the Americas. However, this account is ambiguous and doesn't conclusively point to transatlantic voyages by Malians. Skeptics highlight the lack of concrete archaeological evidence supporting the presence of West Africans in pre-Columbian America. No artifacts, settlements, or human remains definitively linked to Malians have been discovered in the Americas. Furthermore, the logistical challenges of such a voyage, navigating the vast Atlantic without advanced maritime technology, would have been formidable. It's also worth noting that the story of Abu Bakari's voyage is primarily based on oral accounts and the writings of Arab historians, which were recorded decades after the events they describe. Oral traditions can be valuable historical sources, but are also susceptible to embellishment and distortion over time. Further calling the story into question is the fact that no Mansa named Abu Bakari II ever reigned in the Malian Empire. However, it's important to note that this doesn't necessarily mean that the story isn't true in and of itself, but rather that the Arab historian may have simply misremembered the name of the ruler. Notably, there was a previous Malian ruler named Abu Bakr, which may have been the source of the confusion about this name. Also, if you like historical content and mysteries, be sure to check out my alternative channel, Lazy Chill History, for more history content after this video. If you're looking to chill out and study or go to sleep, click my 11-hour Unsolved Mysteries compilation in the video. Also check out my channel for content ranging from unsolved mysteries to true crime to the occult to urban legends and more. That's part 89 of this Unsolved Iceberg in the Bag. Peace out, everyone. The mysterious, potentially shark-related death of Michelle Von Emster in 1994 has continued to raise questions for almost 3 decades. Michelle was found floating deceased near Sunset Cliffs in San Diego, California. The coroner attributed this to a great white shark attack, which has since sparked considerable skepticism due to inconsistencies in the evidence and the nature of her injuries. Michelle had last been seen the night before her body was discovered, when she was dropped off near the pier by a friend after attending a concert. The next day, 2 surfers noticed a flock of seagulls near the water and discovered her body. At first, it seemed that a shark attack might explain her extensive injuries. Her leg was torn off, her ribs and neck were broken, and her body bore multiple lacerations. However, the autopsy revealed additional troubling details, which suggested that a shark may not have been the culprit. Sand was found in her mouth, throat, and stomach, suggesting she had been alive when submerged in the water. This detail contradicted the theory that she died instantly from a shark attack, as most agreed it would have been impossible for her to inhale sand after such an injury. The shark attack theory has been largely discredited by shark experts in the years following her discovery. One renowned shark specialist pointed out that the nature of the bone damage was inconsistent with a great white shark bite, which typically leaves clean incisions. Instead, Michelle's femur was jagged, twisted almost like a piece of bamboo whittled to a point. Furthermore, the absence of tooth fragments in her remains further discredited the shark theory. A number of chilling alternative theories have been proposed. One suggestion is that Michelle fell from the cliffs above, her injuries stemming from the fall and subsequent contact with the rocks. Yet, the extent of her injuries, especially her missing leg, remains unexplained by a simple fall, though it does explain how she may have ended up ingesting sand. Another theory claims that she drowned after being swept out to sea, possibly caught in a riptide, but this too fails to explain the extent of the damage to her body. Perhaps the most sinister theory is that Michelle was slain. She lived in a rough neighborhood, and some speculate that she may have had an encounter with a violent individual before her death. Michelle had previously mentioned to friends that she was being stalked by a man who rode a motorcycle, though this suspect was never identified. Another figure of suspicion was a local writer who had gone on a date with Michelle shortly before her death. His bizarre poem, written after her body was found, disturbingly alluded to the gruesome state she was found in, details that made many uneasy. However, all the details included in this poem were within the public domain, and the poem may have simply been in remarkably poor taste. The placement of Michelle's belongings also raises questions. Her purse was found 2 miles from her body, leading some to believe that it was deliberately planted there by someone trying to mislead investigators. Despite the overwhelming view from shark experts that Michelle was not the victim of a shark attack, her official COD continues to be listed as shark-related till this day. Unfortunately, because of this, there's no active, ongoing investigation into her case. The location of Jomsborg, a Viking stronghold mentioned in various sagas, remains a subject of ongoing debate among historians and archaeologists. Notably, whether Jomsborg actually existed, or whether it was a legendary location, remains the subject of debate as well, though most scholars believe it had at least some basis in reality. Jomsborg was said to be a fortress inhabited by the Joms Vikings, a group of warrior mercenaries active between the 10th and 11th centuries. The Joms Vikings were said to have been extremely dedicated to the service of the Old Norse gods. Think of them like the Knights of St. John, or the Teutonic Knights for Norse paganism. Yet despite this, their love of looting, pillaging, and adventure meant that they would contract themselves out, even to Christian rulers, who were combating the Viking menace. Several theories have been proposed regarding its exact whereabouts, with many scholars placing it on the southern coast of the Baltic Sea in what is now modern-day Poland. The most widely accepted theory identifies Jomsborg with the town of Wolin, situated on the island of the same name. This island is located at the mouth of the Oder River, close to the Baltic Sea. Wolin was an important trading center during the Viking Age, and its strategic location made it a plausible candidate for the fortress described in the sagas. Archaeological evidence from the area has revealed extensive remnants of a fortified settlement dating from the 10th century. This evidence includes charred ramparts and a wooden pier, suggesting the presence of a military stronghold and a trading post, characteristics frequently attributed to Jomsborg. The saga accounts of Jomsborg also create some confusion regarding its location. Early medieval chroniclers referred to the region as Vendland, complicating efforts to pinpoint the fortress's exact spot. In some texts, the fortress is conflated with the broader geographical region known as Yom, adding to the ambiguity. Despite this, the consensus among many scholars is that Wolin was the most probable location for Jomsborg, if it existed. Some alternative theories propose that Jomsborg could have been situated further east in the Baltic region. However, these ideas have garnered less support due to a lack of convincing archaeological evidence. Branson Perry's mysterious disappearance in April 2001 continues to puzzle investigators and the public. At 20 years old, Branson vanished from his hometown of Skidmore, Missouri, a town notorious for its history of strange and violent events. To anyone who is familiar with true crime, you may recognize the name of the town as the place where the community slew their town bully Ken McElroy in broad daylight in 1981. If you're not familiar with that case, I'll be discussing it later on in this episode, so be sure to stay tuned because it's as unusual as it sounds. On the day he disappeared, Branson was helping a friend, Jenna Crawford, clean his father's house while his father was hospitalized. Two mechanics were outside working on his father's car. At some point, Branson mentioned he was going to return some jumper cables to a shed and left the house. He was never seen again. Initially, investigators had little to go on. They interviewed Branson's acquaintances, including Crawford and the mechanics. However, the lack of clear evidence put a stop to their efforts. In the months and years that followed, various theories emerged. Some believed Branson's disappearance was drug-related. It was suggested that he may have owed money to local drug dealers or had knowledge of illegal activities that put him in danger. Though these leads were explored, they ultimately led nowhere. The investigation took a darker turn in 2003 when a man named Jack Wayne Rogers was arrested in connection to unrelated crimes involving unspeakable acts and unlicensed medical procedures. Rogers, a former minister and Boy Scout leader, became a person of interest in Branson's case after authorities found disturbing online posts after his arrest. In these posts, Rogers described the abduction, torture, and slaying of a young blonde male hitchhiker, circumstances that eerily matched Branson's disappearance. Additionally, a turtle claw necklace similar to one owned by Branson was found in Rogers' possession. Despite these clues, Rogers denied involvement, and no further direct evidence tied him to the crime. Ultimately, Rogers was never charged with anything to do with Branson's disappearance, with the consensus being that he had made up the posts to win clout with online sickos. In 2022, Nottoway County Sheriff Randy Strong announced that a suspect had been identified, though more evidence was required before an arrest could be made. Notably, despite the passage of time since this announcement, there doesn't appear to be any further developments in the case. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Branson Perry, I would encourage you to reach out to the Nottoway County Sheriff's Office with details. The Chattahoochee River, a vital waterway running through Georgia, has become the unsettling backdrop for a bizarre and disturbing mystery, the appearance of headless goats. Since at least 2018, hundreds of decapitated goats have been found floating in the river, primarily near bridges like the one along Interstate 20. Despite numerous investigations and widespread media coverage, no one has definitively identified who is behind the dumpings or why they're happening. One of the prevailing explanations ties the headless goats to Santeria, a syncretic religion blending African and Catholic practices, which includes animal sacrifice as part of its rituals. Followers of Santeria often sacrifice goats and chickens to honor their deities, or orishas, believing that the life force within these animals carries potent spiritual energy. This could explain why the goats are found floating in the Chattahoochee, but it doesn't address why the decapitations are happening in such high numbers. Further experts familiar with Santeria note that after the sacrificing event, the animal is generally consumed rather than discarded. However, that said, it does appear that there are certain rituals associated with the religion which require an animal carcass to be put in a river. However, not all experts are convinced that Santeria tells the full story, and that there may be an organized crime element to the activity. The Chattahoochee's proximity to Atlanta, a known hub for substance trafficking, has sparked speculation that these animal sacrifices might be connected to the criminal underworld. It's been suggested that cartel members or other criminals may be performing sacrifices for protection or success. This may explain the particular high volume of headless goats in the Chattahoochee when compared with other regions with a significant amount of Santeria practitioners. Also, just to take a moment to reflect here, that's definitely a line I never thought I'd be delivering in my life. Still others have suggested that the sacrifices could be connected to satanic animal sacrifice rituals. Despite the occult and criminal theories, other more mundane explanations haven't been entirely ruled out. Illegal dumping in the Chattahoochee isn't limited to goats. Tires, old electronics, and other refuse regularly turns up in the water. Some speculate that the goat carcasses could be the byproduct of an unlicensed slaughterhouse or farm, though no definitive proof has emerged to support this. Further, those who are skeptical of the unlicensed slaughterhouse theory question why the rest of the animal wasn't used and why other animals don't turn up in the river in the same way. Luis Armando Albino's abduction case is one of the most extraordinary missing person stories in modern American history, and by the end of this segment you'll realize that's not hyperbole. In 1951, Albino was just 6 years old when he was lured away from Jefferson Square Park in Oakland, California, by a woman who promised him candy. His older brother, Roger, was playing with him at the time, but when Roger momentarily turned his back, Luis vanished. The woman took him across the country to the East Coast, where he was raised by another family as their own child, leaving his biological family devastated and desperate for answers. Albino's family, originally from Puerto Rico, had only recently moved to the U.S., and his mother, Antonia, never stopped searching for him. She clung to the hope that her son was still alive, frequently visiting the Oakland police station, even well into her old age. Sadly, she died in 2005, never knowing what had become of her son. Her family noted that she prayed for Luis every single day of her life, and would never accept the notion or possibility that Luis may be deceased. Her persistence, though, would eventually be rewarded, just not in her lifetime. The discovery of Albino's whereabouts came in 2024, more than 7 decades after his disappearance, thanks to modern DNA technology. His niece, Alida Aliquin, had grown up with stories about her missing uncle. Antonia had kept newspaper clippings and photos of Albino throughout her life, passing down her hope to future generations so they could continue the search. In 2020, Alida submitted her DNA to an ancestry site for fun, only to discover a surprising 22% match with a man living on the East Coast. Initially, she wasn't able to connect with him, but her determination led her to reopen the case with the Oakland police. Her investigative efforts, aided by DNA results, old photographs, and newspaper clippings, led to the reopening of the missing persons case by authorities. Eventually, in June 2024, Albino was found alive, living as a retired Marine Corps veteran and firefighter with his own family. He had no idea he was missing, let alone the subject of a 73-year-long search. Luis was reunited with his biological family in Oakland just 4 days after his discovery. He reconnected with his older brother Roger for the first time since that fateful day in 1951. The reunion was emotional, especially for Roger, who passed away shortly after seeing his brother again. Albino's reappearance provided closure to his family, particularly to Alida, who felt vindicated for her determination to take up Antonia's desire to solve the mystery. The details of the kidnapping are still unknown, and the FBI continues to investigate how and why this event occurred and who was involved. Lake Baikal, located in Siberia, is the world's deepest and oldest freshwater lake, home to the Baikal seal, the only freshwater seal species on Earth. The existence of these seals in such an isolated body of water, far from the ocean, and perched 1,500 feet above sea level, is an ongoing mystery. How did these marine animals find themselves landlocked in a freshwater environment, and how have they adapted to thrive there? Experts believe the seals likely made their way into the lake millions of years ago, possibly during an era when the lake was connected to the Arctic Ocean through a system of rivers. However, the exact pathway remains unclear. One prevailing theory links their arrival to a now defunct river system that once connected Lake Baikal to the Arctic through Siberia. Genetic studies show similarities between Baikal seals and Arctic ringed seals, indicating a shared ancestry. These studies have also been useful in attempting to figure out just how long the seals have been in Lake Baikal, with current estimates being about 2 million years. Their eventual isolation in Baikal due to geological changes allowed them to evolve into a distinct species adapted to the lake's unique ecosystem. Baikal seals rely on a steady diet of golemyanka, a small translucent fish that forms the bulk of their diet. Notably, the only significant natural threats to adult Baikal seals are brown bears, although such encounters are rare as the bears prefer easier prey. But yeah, the trade-off is being forced to eat an unappetizing fish called a golemyanka for every meal for the past 2 million years. So I question whether this was a good trade-off. The seals' success, however, hasn't shielded them from man-made challenges. For one, they face periodic epidemics, some linked to pollutants like DDT and industrial waste from nearby factories. In the 1980s, this problem became so severe that it led to weakened immune systems, which in turn led to opportunistic infections decimating the population. However, stricter regulations and an attempt to preserve Lake Baikal and the seals eventually led to the seal population rebounding. Poaching and accidental deaths in fishing nets also contribute to the loss of seals each year. Despite legal protections and efforts to reduce hunting quotas, a significant number of seals still die annually. Pollution and industrialization around Lake Baikal continue to pose long-term threats, and climate change is increasingly seen as a potential disruptor of the lake's delicate ecosystem. Ken McElroy's death on July 10, 1981, in the small town of Skidmore, Missouri, remains one of the most notorious instances of vigilante justice in modern American history. Known as a violent bully, McElroy had terrorized the town for over 2 decades, committing a series of crimes ranging from theft and arson to aggravated assault, and much, much worse. Given the platform we're on, I can't go too deep into the specifics on his crimes, but let's just say his offenses included the absolute worst things one could ever be accused of. Despite being charged with numerous felonies, his lawyer estimated as many as 3 a year. He consistently evaded significant jail time by intimidating witnesses and manipulating the legal system. McElroy's ability to avoid punishment created a palpable sense of fear among the residents of Skidmore. Law enforcement, undermanned and often reluctant to confront McElroy, was largely ineffective in curbing his reign of terror. The climax of his criminal activities came in 1980 when McElroy shot Bo Bowenkamp, a local grocer, in the neck over a trivial dispute about candy allegedly stolen by McElroy's child. Also, I suppose this was a sort of take your kid to work day activity for McElroy and Jr. Steal some candy and then light up the shopkeeper. Although Bowenkamp survived, McElroy was released on bond after his conviction for assault, and he brazenly continued to harass the town, even threatening Bowenkamp while out on appeal. On the morning of his death, McElroy was sitting in his pickup truck outside the D&G Tavern after having a drink. No word on whether he was legal to drive at the time, but given that local law enforcement was too scared of him to confront him, I guess anything goes in Skidmore. A group of townspeople gathered nearby discussing what could be done about their longtime tormentor. As McElroy sat in his truck, several shots rang out. He was struck by bullets from two different firearms, yet despite the presence of up to 46 witnesses, including his wife, none of the bystanders would identify the shooters. The slaying took place in broad daylight, and McElroy's wife, who had been sitting beside him, was the only person to name a possible shooter, though her accusation never led to charges. In fact, despite multiple investigations by local law enforcement and the FBI, no one has ever been held accountable for McElroy's killing. This silence is often interpreted as a collective decision by the townspeople, who believe that McElroy's death was a necessary and overdue form of justice. Also, this is the part where I would usually say some lines about how you can reach out to law enforcement with tips. And I'm not about to tell you not to go report details of a crime or anything. But let's just say you can go look up the details on where to report any evidence associated with the slaying of Ken McElroy on your own time. The Cambrian explosion, occurring around 540 million years ago, represents a critical juncture in the history of life on Earth. This relatively brief geological period witnessed an unprecedented diversification of multicellular organisms, leading to the emergence of most major animal phyla present today. The sudden appearance of complex life forms in the fossil record has intrigued scientists, prompting extensive research into the underlying causes of this evolutionary milestone. One prominent hypothesis attributes the Cambrian explosion to a significant rise in atmospheric and oceanic oxygen levels. Oxygen plays a crucial role in metabolic processes, particularly in the energy-intensive activities of larger and more complex organisms. Geological evidence suggests that prior to the Cambrian period, oxygen levels were considerably lower, limiting the size and complexity of life forms. The oxygen threshold hypothesis posits that a tipping point was reached when oxygen concentrations increased sufficiently to support aerobic respiration in larger organisms. This rise in oxygen may have been driven by increased photosynthetic activity from cyanobacteria and early algae. This is thought to have led to changes in ocean chemistry and promoting the evolution of more complex life. The evolution of predation is another critical factor proposed to explain the rapid diversification during the Cambrian period. The emergence of the first effective predators would have fundamentally altered ecological dynamics, initiating an evolutionary arms race. Prey species would evolve defensive adaptations, such as hard shells and spines, while predators developed more effective hunting strategies. This coevolutionary process could have accelerated morphological diversification and complexity. Fossil evidence supports this notion, with the appearance of mineralized skeletons and defensive structures coinciding with the Cambrian explosion. The light switch hypothesis highlights the evolution of more complex visual systems as a catalyst for the Cambrian explosion. The development of eyes would have dramatically enhanced the interactions between organisms, facilitating more sophisticated behaviors like active hunting and evasion. Improved vision could have increased the selective pressures on both predators and prey, promoting rapid diversification. Environmental changes, including shifts in climate, sea levels, and ocean chemistry, created new habitats and ecological opportunities. Others speculate that the breakup of the supercontinent Rodinia altered global geography, influencing ocean currents and nutrient distribution. Ecological feedback mechanisms offer another layer of explanation. As new species evolved, they interacted with one another, creating complex ecosystems with intricate food webs. These interactions would have generated new selective pressures and opportunities for diversification. The increasing complexity of ecological relationships could have driven further evolutionary changes, reinforcing the rapid pace of diversification. The role of mass extinction events preceding the Cambrian explosion has also been considered extensively. The snowball Earth hypothesis suggests that global glaciations during the late Proterozoic era drastically reduced biodiversity. The subsequent melting and warming periods could have provided a burst of ecological opportunities for surviving organisms, leading to rapid evolutionary radiation. Some researchers propose that the Cambrian explosion reflects, in part, an artifact of the fossil record. Before the Cambrian period, many organisms lacked hard parts that fossilize readily, leading to a sparse fossil record. The advent of biomineralization increased the likelihood of preservation, making it appear as though life diversified suddenly. While this explains some aspects of the fossil record, it does not fully account for molecular and developmental evidence indicating a genuine increase in diversity. At present, it appears likely that the Cambrian explosion is likely the result of many factors, and we simply don't possess enough evidence at present to know which factors to give what weight to. The Redbird River petroglyphs located in Manchester, Kentucky, are among the state's most intriguing and debated historical artifacts. Carved into a 50-ton sandstone boulder, these petroglyphs have sparked countless theories regarding their origins, with some suggesting they contain inscriptions in up to 8 Old World languages. These include Ancient Greek, Hebrew, Phoenician, and even Norse, which some claim point to pre-Columbian contact between European civilizations and the Americas by Vikings. Despite these claims, no definitive translation or scholarly consensus has been reached regarding the exact meanings of these carvings. The stone itself originally rested on a cliff above the Redbird River before it fell onto Kentucky Route 66 in 1994. Due to its significance, the stone was relocated to Rawlings Stinson Park, where it now sits under a protective shelter. The markings cover much of the stone's face, with proponents of the Old World theory arguing that the carvings represent evidence of ancient transoceanic visits to North America. They claim these inscriptions are proof of contact long before Columbus, dating back as early as the 9th century BC, with links to the Mediterranean and North African cultures. However, many mainstream archaeologists and historians dispute these interpretations. They suggest a more localized explanation, arguing that the carvings are likely the work of Native Americans, possibly the Cherokee, who lived in the region for centuries. Some scholars have posited that the petroglyphs could be the result of colonial-era settlers experimenting with ancient languages they had studied. It wasn't uncommon for learned individuals of the colonial period to have knowledge of Greek, Hebrew, or other ancient scripts, and they may have left these carvings during their time in Kentucky. The petroglyphs have also been associated with local Cherokee myths. Some legends link the carvings to a Cherokee chief named Redbird, who supposedly had a connection to the stone. The carvings could have been a form of communication or storytelling, but without a clear method of interpreting these symbols, much of this remains speculative. The concept of the Pure Land in Buddhism represents a realm of bliss and enlightenment, free from the suffering of the mortal world. Central to Pure Land Buddhism, it revolves around the devotion to Amitabha Buddha, the Buddha of infinite light. Followers believe that by sincerely invoking Amitabha's name, they can be reborn in the Western Pure Land, known as Sukhavati, where attaining enlightenment becomes much easier. Pure Land Buddhism emerged in India, but gained significant prominence in East Asia, particularly in China during the Tang Dynasty. It provided a more accessible path to salvation for laypeople who found traditional Buddhist practices challenging. The emphasis shifted from rigorous meditation and monastic discipline to faith and devotion, making it popular among all social classes. According to Pure Land Buddhists, Amitabha promised that anyone who calls upon his name with genuine faith would be welcomed into his Pure Land after death. This practice, known as Nianfo in Chinese and Nembutsu in Japanese, involves the repetitive chanting of Amitabha's name. It's seen not just as a devotional act, but as a meditative practice that focuses the mind and cultivates inner purity. In Japan, Pure Land Buddhism evolved into distinct schools like Jodo Shu and Jodo Shinshu, founded by the monks Honen and Shinran, respectively. They taught that reliance on one's own efforts was insufficient for salvation in these degenerate times, known as Mappo. Instead, absolute trust in Amitabha's vow was essential, as any form of enlightenment was simply impossible, given the evils of the material world. The Pure Land itself is described as a place adorned with jeweled trees, fragrant blossoms, and celestial music, a realm where beings are free from ignorance and karmic hindrances. Time in the Pure Land is said to be perceived differently. Without the pressures of worldly existence, practitioners can dedicate themselves entirely to understanding Dharma. Pure Land Buddhists believe that their faith in the hereafter also improves the material world around them as well, despite believing in the impurity of the world. Pure Land practitioners argue that sincere faith naturally leads to ethical living and compassion, aligning with core Buddhist principles. Further, Pure Land proponents argue that it offers a practical means for those unable to pursue monastic life. The Mandela effect surrounding Queen's classic "We Are the Champions" has left many listeners confused about how the song actually ends. A large number of people swear the studio version concludes with the iconic line "of the world," yet, when they listen to it again, that final phrase is missing. This discrepancy is what fuels the Mandela effect, a phenomenon where a group of people remember something differently from how it actually occurred. In reality, the studio version of "We Are the Champions" does not end with "of the world." It simply finishes on the line "We are the champions." This has left countless fans puzzled because their memory insists that Freddie Mercury belts out "of the world" as the final statement of the song. The confusion is often attributed to live performances, such as Queen's famous Live Aid performance in 1985, where Mercury does indeed finish the song with that extended phrase. Over time, the live rendition seems to have blended with people's recollections of the studio recording, creating this widespread but incorrect memory. That said, I could have sworn that the studio version of this song included "of the world" at the end of the song, and to the best of my knowledge, I've never listened to the Live Aid version. Anyway, I did some more digging on this one, and I was able to find a live performance of "We Are the Champions," recorded in Budapest in 1986. This version also ends the song with Freddie Mercury belting out the line, which suggests to me that this had unofficially been integrated into the song during live performances. Through the millions of people who saw them live, plus the tens of millions more who have listened to recordings of the live performance, I think this Mandela effect is fully explained. Liminal spaces are the physical embodiment of transition, a threshold between two states of being. These spaces are often characterized by their emptiness, neglect, or disuse. They can be as mundane as a deserted hallway, a vacant parking lot at dusk, or an empty airport terminal at midnight. Despite their ordinary settings, These spaces evoke a profound sense of unease and horror in many people, so much so that liminal horror has become its own genre. The question arises, why do such commonplace environments instill fear? One theory suggests that the discomfort stems from the uncanny nature of liminal spaces. The uncanny valley, a concept originally associated with robotics and animation, describes a point at which something appears almost human but has subtle deviations that cause discomfort. Similarly, liminal spaces are familiar, yet distorted versions of places we know. A school hallway is familiar during the day when bustling with students, but at night, its emptiness transforms it into something unsettling. The familiarity combined with an absence of expected elements creates a cognitive dissonance that unsettles the mind. Evolutionary psychology offers another interesting perspective on this mystery. Humans have evolved to be alert to signs of danger in their environment. Empty or abandoned places could signify the presence of threats or a lack of resources. In prehistoric times, a silent forest might have indicated the presence of predators, prompting a fight or flight response. This ingrained instinct may carry over to modern settings, causing unease in empty urban environments where we expect activity. The concept of psychological liminality may also play a role. Liminality refers to a state of transition between one stage and another. In life, transitional periods often bring about feelings of uncertainty and anxiety. Liminal spaces physically represent this state of flux. Being in such a space can trigger subconscious associations with personal transitions, amplifying feelings of vulnerability and fear. Of course, modern cultural influences cannot be easily ignored. In the last number of years, creepypastas, horror YouTube channels, and video games have frequently used liminal spaces as settings for unsettling events. Even in more traditional media settings like movies and television, abandoned hospitals, empty streets, and deserted houses are common backdrops for horror narratives. This repeated exposure conditions people to associate such environments with fear and danger. This cultural conditioning reinforces the innate discomfort these spaces evoke, creating a positive feedback loop of negative emotions associated with liminal spaces. The absence of human presence is another factor contributing to the horror of liminal spaces. The vast majority of people, even the most introverted amongst us, are inherently social creatures. The lack of other people in a setting where social interaction is expected creates a sense of deep isolation. This isolation can lead to feelings of vulnerability and fear, as there is no one to provide assistance or comfort in case of a threat. This also potentially explains why uninhabited spaces, which we expect to be uninhabited, like a pond in the woods on a sunny day, evoke a sense of warmth rather than fear. Another theory revolves around the disruption of time perception. Liminal spaces often feel disconnected from the normal flow of time. An empty airport terminal late at night might feel timeless, as if existing outside of regular schedules and routines. This temporal dislocation can disorient in the human mind, again leading to feelings of unease. The aesthetic qualities of liminal spaces also contribute to their unsettling nature. Harsh lighting, stark architecture, and repetitive patterns can overwhelm the senses. These environmental factors can induce sensory discomfort, which translates into psychological unease. The warrigal, a cryptid of Australian folklore, is often described as a large, muscular, cat-like predator that roams the remote regions of New South Wales, particularly the Blue Mountains. With a physique resembling a lion, these creatures are said to have distinctive dark fur, sometimes black or burnt orange, and large teeth reminiscent of a saber-toothed cat. Notably, this big cat is said to possess a mane unlike other Australian big cat cryptids like the Queensland tiger or the Blue Mountains panther. While its description often aligns with that of big cats, some speculate it could be a relic of prehistoric species like the thylacoleo or marsupial lion, which once roamed the Australian landscape. However, there's no solid evidence that connects the two species directly. Eyewitness accounts of the warrigal stretch back over a century. In 1889, the first recorded sighting occurred in Megalong Valley, where it allegedly ate livestock. This behavior continued into the 20th century, with sightings often coinciding with reports of slain farm animals. In 1945, a group claimed to have spotted 4 of these creatures in Cedar Valley, marking one of the most detailed sightings of that period. However, this sighting was made through binoculars, which has led some to challenge the details of the description. In 1972, a spate of sheep slayings in the area revived the myth when locals reported a creature with lion-like features roaming the area. Interestingly, Aboriginal folklore may be the source of these tales, as lion and tiger-like animals have been present in indigenous stories long before European settlers arrived. This has led some researchers to argue that the creature is not just a feral or escaped big cat, but a unique species possibly linked to marsupial predators that diverged from traditional carnivores. Modern sightings of the warrigal remain sporadic but persistent, with the last major account coming from 2001. 2 hikers described seeing a black, cat-like creature eating a wallaby from a perch in a tree. Notably, despite the numerous sightings of the creature over the course of well over a century, there's never been a photograph taken of it. Mainstream scientists typically dismiss the warrigal as a myth or a case of mistaken identity, pointing to known species like dingoes or feral big cats. Cryptozoologists assert that there's the potential that the creature represents either a quote-unquote living fossil like the marsupial lion, or a species that has flown under the radar of mainstream science. I find the warrigal fascinating within the broader context of the alien big cat phenomenon. Like other reported ABCs, the warrigal is described as a large, exotic feline in a region where such animals shouldn't exist, raising a ton of questions about its origins. The persistence of warrigal sightings over centuries also mirrors the ABC phenomenon, where anecdotal evidence and sporadic reports keep the mystery alive despite scant evidence. For this reason, I suspect that there may be some truth to this creature, even if it isn't a typical cryptid, so to speak. As I'm recording this, I'm reminded of that one case of a mountain lion that was found in Scotland in the 1980s after years and years of reporting by locals and dismissive responses by officials. Also, big shout out to Orc Lord Dave for another excellent and obscure cryptid suggestion. If you have any suggestions to make, feel free to leave them in the comments below or join up on the Discord and leave your suggestions there. The Phantom Sniper of Camden terrorized the city of Camden, New Jersey, over a short period in late 1927 and early 1928. Throughout this strange saga, a shadowy figure targeted buses, homes, and automobiles, shattering windows and causing widespread panic, yet no clear motive or identity was ever discovered. The sniper's reign of terror began quietly, with incidents initially dismissed as random acts of vandalism. However, as the attacks increased in frequency and boldness, fear gripped the city. The sniper would often shoot at moving targets like buses or parked cars, typically under the cover of darkness, leaving shattered glass and terrified residents in his wake. At the height of the sniper's activity, nearly 50 attacks were attributed to this unknown assailant. One of the most perplexing elements of the Phantom Sniper's attacks was the elusive nature of the projectiles used. Though some victims reported hearing shots fired, authorities often found no bullets at the scene. In some cases, the objects that caused the damage were later identified as marbles or small pellets, adding to the surreal nature of the crime. One notable victim, a police officer, was struck in the back by what was initially believed to be a bullet, but was later revealed to be a marble. This strange detail led some to question whether the attacks were the work of a highly skilled quote-unquote prankster. One of the most significant attacks during the spree occurred when former state senator Albert S. Woodruff became one of the sniper's targets. Though uninjured, his involvement added political pressure to the search for the assailant. Despite this ramping up of the investigations, the sniper was never apprehended, and the attacks stopped as mysteriously as they began. Eyewitness reports were scant, but some described seeing a tall man fleeing from one of the scenes. In one chilling instance, a witness claimed to hear a man laughing before disappearing into the night, adding an eerie layer to the unfolding mystery. These sightings, however, never led to any substantial leads, and the case eventually faded from public attention. The theory that the phantom sniper of Camden may have been a case of mass hysteria gained traction due to the strange and elusive nature of the events. Despite numerous reported attacks and widespread panic, physical evidence was often lacking. In many cases, no bullets were found at the scenes, and some of the so-called projectiles found at the scene of the attacks may have simply been debris in the area. The media frenzy, coupled with fear and uncertainty, could have contributed to the escalation of unverified reports. Mass hysteria, or collective delusion, has been known to occur in situations of heightened anxiety, where imagined threats are perceived as real. This theory suggests that the public's growing fear created a feedback loop, amplifying normal events into terrifying encounters attributed to an unseen assailant. Although it can't fully explain the shattered windows and injuries, the idea of mass hysteria provides one possible lens to interpret the Camden sniper mystery. Some speculate that the phantom sniper may have had a supernatural origin, given the mysterious and elusive nature of the attacks. Witnesses described eerie phenomena, such as hearing ghostly laughter or seeing a shadowy figure vanish after incidents. The lack of clear evidence, including the absence of bullets in many cases, fueled ideas that the sniper could be a ghost or some other worldly entity. Law enforcement agencies have increasingly turned to honeypots as a potent tool in cybercrime prevention and detection. A honeypot, in essence, is a deliberately vulnerable digital decoy designed to lure cybercriminals, allowing authorities to observe, analyze, and collect intelligence on their behavior. The core strategy behind honeypots involves deception and surveillance. The FBI's use of honeypots has gained significant attention due to several high-profile operations. One notable recent example is Operation Trojan Shield, which saw the FBI and Australian police distributing encrypted smartphones equipped with a specially designed honeypot app called Anom. Criminal organizations across the globe adopted this app under the belief that their communications were secure, while law enforcement agencies secretly monitored all activities. This operation led to over 800 arrests, showcasing the effectiveness of honeypots in dismantling organized crime networks. By pretending to offer a secure communication platform, authorities intercepted a wide range of illegal activities, from substance trafficking to money laundering. Also, some of the transcripts of the texts sent through the app are available to the public, and it's somewhat bizarre how open and brazen the criminals were in using the app. I always imagined that people involved in organized crime would be highly paranoid, leading to the use of heavily coded language, but apparently not. Other honeypots are set up to attract hackers wishing to infiltrate systems and engage in activities like cyber espionage. These operations exist not solely to catch individuals or shut down organizations, but to develop intelligence on strategies used by hackers. These tools have become particularly useful in seeking to mitigate cyber threats by diverting hackers away from genuine targets and providing critical insights into criminal tactics. Law enforcement agencies set up these traps to mimic legitimate systems or services that cybercriminals would find attractive. Whether it's a vulnerable file sharing system, an ostensibly secure messaging platform, or a fake banking portal, the goal is to entice hackers into engaging with the decoy. Once an attacker begins interacting with the system, law enforcement can track their activities, collect forensic evidence, and often identify the individuals involved. Modern honeypots are highly sophisticated, offering varying levels of interaction to study different types of attacks. High interaction honeypots, for example, simulate real systems in such detail that attackers believe they have breached a legitimate network, giving investigators deeper insights into their methodologies. However, the use of honeypots also raises legal and ethical concerns. One of the primary issues is the fine line between legitimate surveillance and entrapment. Entrapment occurs when law enforcement induces an individual to commit a crime they would not have otherwise considered, which could compromise the legality of the operation. To mitigate this, agencies attempt to ensure that honeypots are only used to catch criminals who are already predisposed to engaging in illegal activities. For instance, an individual seeking to hack into a banking system or purchase substances would already have criminal intent before interacting with a honeypot. Another challenge with honeypots lies in the risk of compromise. If cybercriminals detect that they are interacting with a decoy system, they may use it against law enforcement by planting false information or leveraging information to gain access to real systems. Further, law enforcement often co-opts legitimate online criminal operations and turns them into a honeypot, sometimes forcing cooperation from the original criminals running the operation. Hypnosis has fascinated people for centuries, evolving from mystical practices to a recognized therapeutic technique today. It's generally accepted as a phenomenon where a person experiences heightened suggestibility, relaxation, and focused attention. The origins of hypnosis can be traced back to ancient civilizations like Egypt, Greece, and China, where trance-like states were used in healing rituals. The sleep temples of Egypt were places where priests induced sleep or trance states to promote healing and receive divine messages. In Greece, the Temple of Epidaurus served a similar purpose, where patients underwent incubation to receive cures from the god Asclepius. Shamanic traditions worldwide also utilize trance states for healing and spiritual purposes, with some arguing that these states represent hypnosis or self-hypnosis. These early practices laid the groundwork for understanding altered states of consciousness, even if they weren't labeled as hypnosis at the time. In the 18th century, Franz Anton Mesmer, an Austrian physician, introduced the concept of animal magnetism. Mesmer believed that an invisible natural force flowed through all living things and could be manipulated to heal illnesses. His methods involved passing magnets or his hands over patients to redistribute this force, leading to trance-like states and reportedly miraculous cures. His surname is also indelibly associated with hypnotism through the now outdated term mesmerism and the still widely used synonym for hypnotize, mesmerize. Mesmer's practices gained significant popularity, but were also met with equal and opposite skepticism. In 1784, a commission appointed by King Louis XVI, which included Benjamin Franklin, investigated Mesmer's claims. They concluded that the effects were due to imagination and suggestion rather than any magnetic force. Despite this supposed debunking of the phenomenon, Mesmer's work laid important foundations for the development of hypnotism. James Braid, a Scottish surgeon, is credited with coining the term hypnotism in the 1840s. After witnessing demonstrations of mesmerism, Braid theorized that the phenomena were psychological rather than magnetic, confirming the studies done by Ben Franklin. He observed that focused attention and eye fixation could induce a trance state, which he termed neurohypnotism or nervous sleep. Braid's work shifted the focus from Mesmer's mystical explanations to a more scientific understanding based on suggestion and concentration. Braid experimented with hypnosis for pain control during surgery, predating the widespread use of chemical anesthesia. While his findings were not widely adopted at the time, they influenced other medical professionals to explore hypnosis as a tool in clinical settings. Other physicians and psychologists continued to work with the ideas of Braid and Mesmer over the course of the 19th and early 20th centuries. Sigmund Freud initially used hypnosis in his clinical practice to explore the unconscious mind. He found that hypnosis could bring repressed memories and emotions to the surface, aiding in the treatment of neuroses. However, Freud eventually abandoned hypnosis in favor of free association and dream analysis. He believed these methods provided deeper access to the unconscious without the limitations he perceived in hypnosis, such as the potential for false memories. In the 20th century, Milton H. Erickson, an American psychiatrist, revolutionized hypnosis by introducing indirect suggestion and storytelling techniques. He believed that the unconscious mind could be accessed through metaphor and anecdote, facilitating therapeutic change without direct commands. Today, hypnosis is used in various medical and psychological treatments. Clinical hypnotherapy assists with pain management, anxiety reduction, smoking cessation, and treating phobias. Also, by way of credit to Dr. Braid, modern science has shown hypnosis reduces the need for anesthesia during surgical procedures and to alleviate chronic pain conditions. The cave cow is a cryptid believed to inhabit the cave systems of Central America, particularly in the Yucatan Peninsula and Belize. Also, just a quick humorous programming note. As I was editing this, I realized I called the cave cow an encryptid, which sounds perfect for a cryptid that's basically stuck in a cave. This creature is often described by locals as a large, hair-covered animal with sloth-like features, typically measuring between 10 and 12 feet in length. It is said to dwell deep in caves, emerging only at night to feed on vegetation and small animals. The rarity of sightings, combined with the cave cow's secluded habitat, contributes to the mystery surrounding it. Though the creature has a very distinctive name, the cave cow doesn't appear to me to have any particular bovid qualities whatsoever. Some suggest that the cave cow may be a large ground sloth, perhaps the descendant of a prehistoric giant sloth that fled to the cave systems. Some suggest that its lineage might trace back to an ancient, undiscovered species, possibly a surviving remnant of prehistoric creatures that have adapted to life underground. This theory finds support in the Yucatan's vast and largely unexplored cave systems, which could easily conceal such an elusive animal. The Mayan culture, which has long dominated the region, includes references to cave-dwelling animals in its mythology, though it is unclear if the cave cow is explicitly mentioned in ancient texts. The creature's supposed nocturnal nature is a key reason why it remains largely unseen. Most reported encounters happen during night or very early morning, when the creature is believed to leave its cave in search of food. Its diet is said to consist mainly of vegetation, though some accounts suggest it may also prey on small animals. Personally, I think the real mystery with the cave cow may not be whether the animal exists, but rather why such a creature was named the cave cow. Seriously, in what way is a giant cave-dwelling sloth cryptid in any way related to cows? The Testament of Solomon is a work traditionally attributed to King Solomon, renowned in biblical tradition for his wisdom and for constructing the first temple in Jerusalem. Likely composed between the 1st and 3rd centuries AD, it holds significant value in demonology. This work details Solomon's interactions with various demons, whom he binds and then compels to assist him in building the temple. The narrative begins with Solomon receiving a magical ring from the archangel Michael, granted by God, empowering him to command demons. This ring, inscribed with the seal of Solomon, is central to his control over demonic entities. The text proceeds to catalog the demons summoned by Solomon, each possessing unique characteristics, origins, and the afflictions they impose upon humans. A primary role of the Testament in demonology is its comprehensive classification of demons. These entities are portrayed with intricate personalities and specific domains of influence. The Testament of Solomon integrates elements of Greek and Near Eastern mythology, reflecting a mixture of cultural and religious beliefs. For instance, the inclusion of figures like Ephippas, a wind demon from Arabian lore, and Obi-Zuth, who is based on Medusa, reflects a blending of different demonological traditions. In addition to cataloging demons, the Testament offers insights into methods of exorcism and protection against demonic influences. Solomon's interactions with demons often culminate in the demons revealing the angels or rituals that can thwart them, providing practical guidance for readers. This aspect underscores the text's function not only as a narrative, but also as a manual for combating supposed demonic afflictions. The Testament of Solomon significantly influenced later magical practices, with Solomon often being credited as the first human to truly bring these dark forces under control. Its themes and demon classifications appear in grimoires and occult texts throughout the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. The concept of commanding demons through divine authority or magical means became a recurring motif in Western esoteric traditions that continues until this day. The Seal of Solomon itself evolved into a prominent symbol in magical iconography, representing the power to bind and control spiritual entities. In modern magical contexts, the Testament of Solomon remains a foundational text to certain schools of magic. The history of the Trojan civilization centers around the ancient city of Troy, located in present-day Hisarlik, Turkey. The earliest settlements in Troy date back to around 3600 BC, with the city evolving into a small fortified urban center by 3000 BC. Troy's history is marked by a series of destructions and rebuildings, resulting in 9 archaeological layers, each representing different phases of its habitation. The Trojans were an Anatolian people with close cultural ties to other people inhabiting the region. Their strategic location near the Dardanelles Strait made Troy a significant trade and military hub. During the Late Bronze Age, Troy, known as Wilusa in Hittite texts, was a vassal state of the Hittite Empire, suggesting it was an influential city-state involved in regional politics. The most famous aspect of Trojan history is the Trojan War, a legendary conflict between the Achaean Greeks and the city of Troy. According to Greek mythology, the war was sparked by Paris of Troy abducting Helen, wife of Menelaus, king of Sparta. This event is immortalized in Homer's epic poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey, although the historicity of the war remains debated among scholars. The war is traditionally dated to the 12th or 13th century BC, with many believing it represents a series of conflicts rather than a single event. Archaeological evidence supports the existence of a significant settlement at Hisarlik, with layers indicating destructions that align with the timeline of the Trojan War. Troy 7 in particular shows signs of a violent end, possibly correlating with the war described by Homer. This layer, dated to around the 12th century BC, reveals a city that was well fortified and densely populated, fitting the profile of the besieged Troy. The downfall of Troy marked the end of its prominence in the region. Post destruction, the site saw periods of reoccupation during Greek and Roman times. However, the inhabitants were Greeks rather than Trojans. Modern excavations, beginning with Heinrich Schliemann in the 19th century, have brought to light many details about its extensive history. However, the exact relationship between myth and reality continues to be a subject of scholarly investigation and mystery. Also, if you're interested in historical content, be sure to check out my second channel, Lazy Chill History. You can find a link to the channel on my channel page. Just click my profile and check it out, and don't forget to subscribe there. If you liked this video, please do me a huge favor and click like and subscribe, and also click the share button and send it to anyone who you think may enjoy it. Also be sure to check out my other Iceberg videos on my channel page. I've got videos covering a variety of topics, from conspiracies to urban legends to spookier stuff for the season such as demonology. Shout out to my patrons Iced Mocha, Kurt the Squirt, Monoxide Wendigo, Jeffer Metcalf, Z-Volts, Courtney Hammett, Out of Gray's Mind, Cap, Dionysus, Silba Rose, Franz Tech, Unknown Delusions, Faye, Jack Russell, Boomslang, Spookiest Becky, Vespertine, Meta Nova, Will Rowan, Crab Nebula, and Blasphemoose. Raphael's Portrait of a Young Man, painted in 1514, is a significant work from the Italian High Renaissance. The subject's identity remains unverified, though many scholars have traditionally regarded it as Raphael's self-portrait. The facial features are perceived by specialists as compatible with, if not clearly identical to, the only undoubted self-portrait by Raphael in his fresco, The School of Athens, at the Vatican. The portrait depicts a richly dressed and confidently poised young man, embodying the elegance and sophistication characteristic of Raphael's work during this period. Before World War II, the painting was part of the Czartoryski Museum's collection in Krakow, Poland. The museum, established by Princess Isabella Czartoryska in the early 19th century, housed numerous masterpieces, including works by Leonardo da Vinci and Rembrandt. These works were acquired by the Czartoryski family during their extensive travels across Europe, with this particular work being acquired in 1798. Interestingly, the provenance of the painting prior to its acquisition by the Czartoryski family in 1798 remains largely undocumented. Specific records detailing its ownership during the intervening centuries are scarce. In 1939, as Germany invaded Poland, the Czartoryski family attempted to safeguard their collection by hiding key pieces, including Raphael's Portrait of a Young Man, in a residence in Sieniawa. Despite these efforts, the Gestapo discovered the hidden artworks. Hans Frank, the German-appointed Governor-General of occupied Poland, took possession of the painting. He displayed it prominently in his residence at Wawel Castle in Krakow. As the war neared its end in January 1945, Frank transported several artworks, including Raphael's portrait, to his villa in Neuhaus am Schliersee, Germany. After his arrest by American forces in May 1945, many looted artworks were recovered, but Portrait of a Young Man was not among them. Its whereabouts have remained unknown since then, giving rise to significant speculation as to its whereabouts. One prominent idea is that the painting may now reside in a private collection, possibly in Germany, the United States, Switzerland, or Russia. During and after the war, clandestine art transactions were common, and it's plausible that the artwork was discreetly acquired by a private collector who has since kept it hidden. Some experts suspect the painting may even have been passed down through generations. Under this theory, its owners are either unaware of its historical significance or purposefully keeping it concealed to avoid legal or financial consequences. This theory remains compelling given the secrecy that often surrounds private art holdings. Another possibility is that the painting was destroyed during the chaotic final days of the war. This theory gained attention due to dramatizations like the 2014 film The Monuments Men, which portrayed German forces deliberately destroying stolen artworks. While no evidence confirms this scenario, the destruction of countless cultural artifacts during the war makes it a sobering possibility. If true, it would mean that the portrait of a young man is lost forever, joining the long list of cultural treasures irretrievably damaged in wartime. A less grim but equally plausible theory is that the painting may simply have been misplaced during the extensive relocations of art throughout the war. In their efforts to safeguard or hide cultural treasures, officials from various countries moved countless artworks into storage. Some items became lost or forgotten in these vast repositories, particularly in the post-war period, when the focus shifted to rebuilding cities and infrastructure. It's possible that Raphael's work lies dormant in one of these storerooms, waiting to be rediscovered. Finally, there is the theory that the painting is held by individuals who unknowingly acquired it during or after the war. Looted artworks often changed hands multiple times, and some pieces were sold without their origins being fully disclosed. In this scenario, the portrait of a young man might be hanging in someone's home, unrecognized for the masterpiece it truly is. Personally, I find this scenario somewhat unlikely, given the very clear quality of the work, and given that Raphael is one of the most famous painters of all time. Mary Frances Gregory, a 19-year-old woman from Parry Sound, Ontario, disappeared in February 1978 under circumstances that have baffled authorities for over 4 decades. Her case remains one of the most perplexing missing person mysteries in Canadian history. Every detail about Mary's disappearance, from the people she traveled with to the locations she passed through, leads to more questions than answers, leaving her family desperate for closure. Mary's journey began with plans for a trip to Palo Alto, California, where she intended to visit acquaintances. On February 15, 1978, she left home in the company of a male companion whose identity has never been publicly disclosed. This man later told investigators that he and Mary drove from Ontario into the United States via New York before traveling through several states. According to the man, they went through Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and Nevada. He claimed that on February 28, 1978, he dropped Mary off at a bus station in Las Vegas, Nevada. However, she never arrived in Palo Alto, and there has been no verifiable evidence of her movements since. The bus station in Las Vegas is a pivotal element in Mary's case. If the male companion's account is accurate, Mary would have been in possession of her luggage and intending to continue her journey alone. Yet, no one has come forward to confirm seeing her at the station. Given that this story has flown under the radar, some details are hard to come by. For instance, I've located some sources which say her luggage was recovered, and others which say her luggage was never recovered. If her luggage was recovered, the details of what she was carrying and where it was found have never been released. Additionally, there are no known bus tickets or records linking her to any departure. This lack of tangible evidence casts doubt on the man's story. Authorities have never revealed whether he was formally investigated, leaving questions about his potential involvement unanswered. At the time of her disappearance, Mary was described as standing 5 feet 3 inches tall, weighing approximately 110 pounds, with dark blonde hair and hazel eyes. Notably, she had a prominent mole on her waist. These details have been crucial for investigators over the years, as they've attempted to compare her description to unidentified remains found across North America. Despite these efforts, no matches have been made. For instance, her DNA was compared to the remains of the Perry County Jane Doe, a body discovered in Pennsylvania, and Sahara Sue, a formerly unidentified woman found in Nevada. Mary's family has remained vocal about her disappearance. They've speculated that she may have suffered from memory loss, leading her to become disoriented or unable to contact her loved ones. This theory finds some apparent support by the lack of any verified sightings or communications from Mary following February 1978. However, given the passage of time, this seems highly unlikely to me. Over the years, the Ontario Provincial Police, better known as the OPP, have revisited her case multiple times, yet no significant breakthroughs have occurred. The male companion's role in Mary's disappearance has drawn scrutiny. His account is the only narrative of her last known movements, making him a central figure in the investigation. While authorities haven't publicly accused him of wrongdoing, his failure to provide corroborating evidence for his claims raises suspicions. Moreover, his decision to part ways with Mary, leaving her alone in an unfamiliar city, has been criticized as reckless by some. Given that the police file is still open, the details regarding the investigation are still a closely guarded secret. The police may have a very good reason for not naming this male companion. For instance, he may have provided evidence that's not publicly known that clears him entirely. Adding to the complexity is the vast geography involved in Mary's disappearance, and the numerous police agencies involved spanning both the US and Canada. She and her companion allegedly traveled through one Canadian province and numerous US states, making it difficult to pinpoint where or when she may have gone missing. The distance between Parry Sound, Ontario, and Las Vegas, Nevada, is over 2,000 miles, with countless potential sites where something could have gone wrong. This vast search area has hindered investigations, as authorities in both Canada and the United States lack specific leads to narrow their focus. Another notable aspect of the case is the timing. In 1978, there were fewer technological resources available for tracking missing persons. Surveillance cameras were scarce to the extent they existed at all, and cross-jurisdictional cooperation between law enforcement agencies was significantly less efficient than it is today. These limitations likely contributed to the initial difficulties in tracing Mary's movements, allowing critical evidence or witnesses to slip through the cracks. Further, in 1978, the border between the United States and Canada was virtually non-existent in terms of the flow of people. Border agencies focused almost entirely on individuals attempting to smuggle goods across the border, and no records were kept of crossings. Notably, individuals could cross from Canada into the US without any documentation whatsoever. In my research, it appears that at this time it was entirely at the discretion of a US border agent to ask for even a driver's license. The question of foul play looms heavily over the case. While there's no definitive evidence to suggest Mary was harmed, her complete disappearance without any subsequent contact strongly implies a deliberate act. Whether she was the victim of an accident, a crime, or another unforeseen event, the truth remains a mystery. If you have any information regarding Mary Gregory's disappearance, please contact the Ontario Provincial Police. Also, big shout out to patron Major Zilla for bringing this obscure and fascinating case to my attention. If you have any recommendations for this series, please join the Discord, leave a comment below, or shoot me an email. The death by coconut legend is a classic example of how an extremely unusual and rare occurrence can evolve into a widely believed myth. According to the urban legend, more people are killed each year by falling coconuts than by shark attacks, with the statistic often cited as 150 deaths annually. However, while documented cases of coconut-related deaths do exist, the scale has been exaggerated over time. The origin of this urban legend can be traced back to a 1984 paper titled Injuries Due to Falling Coconuts, which was based on research conducted in Papua New Guinea. This study highlighted the dangers posed by falling coconuts, noting injuries and fatalities associated with these incidents. The study found that falling coconuts could result in serious injuries like skull fractures and worse, especially in tropical regions where coconut trees are abundant. However, the study never claimed that 150 people died globally from coconuts annually, and the author was only able to find a few accounts of these events. In 1777, for example, King Tetui of Mangaya in the Cook Islands reportedly lost a concubine when a green coconut fell on her head. However, this case is poorly documented, and some have argued this could be a euphemism for something worse. Other examples include a U.S. Marine who died in 1943 while sleeping beneath a coconut tree on Guadalcanal, and several tragic incidents in Sri Lanka and India. These individual cases, though rare, underscore the potential danger posed by coconuts when they fall from heights of up to 100 feet. Durandal, the legendary sword of Roland, a paladin under Charlemagne, holds a prominent place in medieval European literature. Renowned for its supposed indestructibility and sharpness, Durandal is central to various tales, most notably La Chanson de Roland. In La Chanson de Roland, Durandal is described as containing sacred relics within its golden hilt: a tooth of Saint Peter, blood of Saint Basil, hair of Saint Denis, and the clothing of the Virgin Mary. These relics were believed to imbue the sword with divine power, making it a formidable weapon against adversaries. The poem narrates that during the Battle of Roncevaux Pass, Roland, facing overwhelming forces, used Durandal to slay numerous enemies, including severing the right arm of the Saracen king. Fearing that the sword might fall into enemy hands, Roland attempted to destroy it by striking it against marble blocks, but Durandal remained unscathed. Ultimately, Roland concealed the sword beneath his body as he lay dying, alongside his elephant tusk hunting horn. Various legends surround Durandal's origin. One account states that an angel presented the sword to Charlemagne in the Vale of Maurienne, who then bestowed it upon Roland. Another tale from the 12th century Chanson de Geste Menet recounts that a young Charlemagne, under the pseudonym Menet, acquired the blade after slaying the Saracen Bremont in Spain. Additionally, the Song of Aspremont describes Roland defeating the Saracen Oman, son of King Agalant, and claiming the sword as his prize. Local lore in Rocamadour, France, adds another layer to Durandal's mythos. According to tradition, instead of dying with Durandal hidden under his body, Roland called on the Archangel Michael for assistance. With the assistance of Michael, he was able to throw the sword several hundred kilometers across the border into France, where it came to rest in Rocamadour. There, it was deposited in the Chapel of Mary, before allegedly being stolen by Henry the Young King, who was serving as junior King of England in 1183. Numerous replicas have been created, though they have all been stolen, with the most recent replica having been stolen in June 2024. The historicity of Durandal remains a subject of debate among historians and literary scholars. While the sword is prominently featured in medieval epics like the Song of Roland, its existence as a real weapon is highly questionable. Most scholars argue that Durandal is a product of medieval romanticization rather than a historical artifact. One of the central points against Durandal's historicity is its portrayal in legend. It's described as containing sacred relics and being indestructible, attributes consistent with mythic storytelling rather than historical fact. Such embellishments align with the broader purpose of epic poetry, to inspire and glorify national or religious identity rather than document real events. Proponents of Durandal's possible historicity point to the medieval practice of creating legendary narratives around real artifacts. It's conceivable that a sword belonging to a notable Frankish knight like Roland, who is a well-documented historical figure, became a focal point for myth-making. Additionally, the Battle of Roncevaux Pass, where Durandal is said to have been wielded in a last stand by Roland, was a historical event, and Roland was slain in this battle. Quick reminder to hit that like button, tap subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the chill vibes coming your way. The urban legend of the Headlight Flash Gang initiation has circulated for decades, particularly in the United States and Canada. This narrative involves a gang initiation ritual where prospective members drive at night without their headlights on. If an unsuspecting driver flashes their lights to signal that the gang member's headlights are off, it allegedly triggers the initiation rite. According to the myth, the gang member is then required to pursue the helpful driver and slay them as part of the initiation process. The legend first gained traction in the early to mid-80s, particularly during a period when gang violence was a heightened concern in many U.S. cities. The myth often resurfaces in times of societal unease, frequently being shared through chain emails, social media posts, or by word of mouth. Despite its repeated debunking by law enforcement agencies and myth-busting websites, the story continues to spark fear. What makes this urban legend so powerful is its adaptability. Versions of the story have been tailored to local contexts, with specific highways or neighborhoods often mentioned, making the threat seem more immediate and real. The myth taps into the existing fear of crime in big cities and reinforces a sense of vulnerability while driving, an activity that typically represents personal autonomy and safety. It also plays on the basic social instinct to be helpful. Flashing your headlights is a universal signal of goodwill, yet the legend corrupts this simple act into one of life-threatening risk. Kimberly Fitka Odoman, a 40-year-old mother of 7 and the tribal administrator for the native village of Marshall, Alaska, was reported missing on June 15, 2023. Her body was discovered 12 days later, approximately 30 miles upriver from Emmenak on the Yukon River. On the evening of her disappearance, Kimberly informed her mother that someone had hit her that evening and that she was going back to intervene in a fight. She didn't return, prompting her mother to report her missing the following day. Jackie George, Kimberly's best friend and leader of Marshall's search and rescue team, for over 15 years, spearheaded the search efforts. The community, along with volunteers from neighboring villages such as Russian Mission, Pilot Station, and Mountain Village, conducted extensive searches along the Yukon River. Despite their efforts, it was a couple not involved in the search who discovered Kimberly's body about 100 miles downriver. Alaska State Troopers didn't arrive in Marshall until 5 days after Kimberly was reported missing. This delay has been a point of contention among her family and friends, who believe that earlier intervention might have preserved crucial evidence. They reported finding signs of a struggle near her home, including her eyeglasses and handprints indicating someone had been dragged into the river. By the time troopers arrived, much of this evidence had been lost. The state medical examiner's office determined that Kimberly died by drowning. However, her family has raised concerns about the handling of her personal belongings, which were returned to them in a sealed, muddy bag. Upon cleaning the items, they discovered her phone, which was still operational, and identification materials that could have expedited the identification process. In October 2023, Kimberly's family attended the Alaska Federation of Natives Convention in Anchorage to share her story and advocate for justice. They wore custom hoodies featuring the missing and slain Indigenous women red handprint logo and the message, "Justice for Kim." During the convention, they expressed their dissatisfaction with the investigation's handling and called for greater accountability from state agencies. While the official investigation determined that her death was the result of an accidental drowning, her family insists that the police investigation was botched. Also, since I'm sure many of you are wondering, the Alaska State Troopers have advised that they spoke to the person who punched Kimberly and cleared that person as a suspect. Lana Patricia Derrick, a 19-year-old Indigenous woman from the Gitanyao First Nation, disappeared on October 7, 1995, near Terrace, British Columbia in Canada. Despite extensive efforts by her family and community, no trace of Lana has ever been found, leaving her family with questions and heartache that have endured for decades. Lana was a bright, ambitious young woman who was attending Northwest Community College in Houston, British Columbia, studying forestry. On the weekend of her disappearance, she had traveled home to Terrace for the Thanksgiving holiday. On the night she went missing, she reportedly visited her friend Clarice around 3 a.m. to borrow money and invited her to a party. Clarice declined the invitation, and this encounter is the last confirmed sighting of Lana by someone who knew her personally. Another unverified report suggested that Lana was later seen at a gas station on Highway 16 near Terrace, often referred to as the Highway of Tears. This stretch of road has gained notoriety over the years for the alarming number of disappearances and slayings of women, most of whom are Indigenous. The circumstances surrounding Lana's disappearance remain a mystery. Investigators from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, commonly known as the RCMP, launched a search soon after her disappearance was reported, but the efforts were fruitless. Lana's family has been vocal about their dissatisfaction with the initial investigation. Her aunt, Sally Gibson, recalled the community's frustration when official search efforts were called off after only a short time. The family and community members continued to organize their own searches, combing forests, rivers, and other areas near Terrace in hopes of finding Lana or uncovering clues to her fate. Fortunately, Lana's family continues to keep her case active, organizing events and engaging the media to call on further investigations of Lana's disappearance. If you have any information about the disappearance of Lana Derrick, please contact the British Columbia RCMP. On the evening of August 22, 1990, Cheryl Henry, 22, and Andy Atkinson, 21, embarked on a date that would tragically become their last. The couple met at Bayou Mama's nightclub in Houston, Texas, accompanied by Cheryl's sister, Shane. After spending time together, Cheryl and Andy departed around 11:30 p.m., heading to a secluded area known as Lover's Lane off Enclave Parkway in West Houston. The following day, when Cheryl didn't return home, her family grew concerned and contacted the Houston Police Department. A security guard discovered Andy's white Honda Civic parked in an isolated cul-de-sac with the key still in the ignition. Inside the vehicle, officers found Cheryl's purse and shoes, but there was no sign of the couple. A search ensued, leading to the grim discovery of Cheryl's body approximately 200 yards from the car. She was found face down, her hands bound behind her back with hemp rope. Her clothing had been cut from her body, and she had suffered 3 deep lacerations to her throat. The perpetrator had attempted to conceal her remains under wooden boards. Nearby, a $20 bill was found, an odd detail that puzzled investigators. The following day, Andy's body was located tied to a tree about 100 yards from where Cheryl was found. He was seated with his back against the trunk, his hands bound behind him. His throat had been slashed so deeply that he was nearly decapitated. Notably, Andy's personal belongings, including money and a watch, were left untouched, suggesting that robbery was not the motive. The crime scene presented several peculiarities. A golf club and 3 golf balls were discovered arranged in a line, pointing towards Cheryl's body. Additionally, 4 partially deflated balloons were found tied to a tree above her. These items appeared to have been deliberately placed, but their significance remained unclear. Investigators collected DNA evidence from the scene, but initial efforts to identify a suspect proved unsuccessful. The case remained unsolved for years, leaving the families of Cheryl and Andy in anguish. In 2001, a letter was sent to the Houston Police Department, postmarked in Houston, stating, "If you want to know who killed C. Henry and A. Atkinson, it'll cost $100,000. The note instructed investigators to reply in the classified section of the Houston Chronicle. Despite following these instructions, no further communication was received, and the lead went cold. The consensus belief appears to be that this was actually a cruel practical joke. A significant development occurred in 2008 when DNA evidence from Cheryl's case was matched to a 1990 essay of a 30-year-old dancer in Houston. The victim had been attacked in her home by a man wearing a fishnet stocking over his head, black gloves, and dark clothing resembling a uniform. He had bound her with duct tape, placed a bag over her head, and assaulted her. The attacker had also inquired about her boyfriend by name, indicating he had prior knowledge of her. This connection led to the release of a composite sketch of the suspect, described as a white male in his mid-30s, approximately 6 feet tall, weighing around 180 pounds. He was described as having dark blonde to light brown hair and possibly a mustache. Despite this advancement, the identity of the individual remained elusive, as his DNA did not match any profiles in the national database. In the years that followed, investigators explored various avenues to identify the perpetrator. They considered the possibility that the suspect frequented local men's clubs, given that Cheryl allegedly worked at one, and the earlier assault victim was employed in such an establishment. Additionally, the suspect's attire during the assault suggested he might have had a background in security or law enforcement. Advancements in DNA technology offered renewed hope. In 2017, the Houston Police Department's Cold Case Squad began exploring the use of familial DNA testing. This technique involves searching DNA databases for profiles that share significant genetic markers with the suspect's DNA, potentially leading to relatives and, ultimately, the suspect. Given that they have the DNA evidence from the individual who committed the heinous act, and given advancements in forensics, I anticipate it's only a matter of time before the perp's caught. In the meantime, if you have any information regarding the tragic slaying of this young couple, please reach out to the Houston Police Department. If you want to support my work further, please consider checking out the YouTube membership or Patreon. You can support for as little as $1 a month, and there's some cool little perks. Anyway, peace out everyone. As always, love you all, and thank you for all your support.